She is Darya, the female protagonist beloved by countless admirers. Not only does her energy-rampaging brother transform into a docile kitten under her comfort, even the noble emperor, the arrogant duke, and the aloof clan leader would transform into peacocks, constantly displaying their magnificent plumage to compete for her favor and seek her love. Even the cold female assassin, whom ordinary mortals are unworthy of, would hold her tightly in her arms. Darya, as long as I'm here, no one else is needed. In reality, Andreisha standing before her was the charming heroine pursued by men in the original story. Yet now the protagonist has become her, and even Darya herself cannot understand why this transformation occurred. She was reborn into a dark otome game, becoming Darya, the sister of the most insane villain. This revelation only came to her after she celebrated her 13th birthday, when she remembered that she had entered a game called Ouroboros Labyrinth. The game features many handsome male characters, but each one is a deranged, obsessive individual who would stop at nothing to possess the heroine Andreisha. Her brother, whom she had not seen for 13 years, Eclipse Pestrotz, stands as the most psychotic and obsessive villain boss among all characters. Even those close to him would be mercilessly cut down by his sword. In the original story, Eclipse was the sole heir of Duke Pestrotz, and now Darya, as a unique existence who entered the game, has become the second child of the ducal household. However, Darya, who possesses some understanding of the game, knows this is not a beautiful gift bestowed upon her after reincarnation, but rather a continuous descent into the abyss. This is because the game contains a crucial setting known as transcendence. They grow stronger as their magical power awakens, yet their minds edge closer to complete breakdown. Her brother Eclipse is precisely a transcendent, and one of the most obsessive characters competing for the heroine. Ultimately, due to continuous use of magic, his mind collapses into a berserk state, and he is eventually destroyed by the Emperor. In the original story, regardless of which route is chosen, only a fatal ending awaits the Pestrotz family. Fortunately, Eclipse's magical awakening occurs on his 18th birthday, and Darya's brother is currently only 16 years old. Perhaps seeing such an adorable and innocent sister might suppress his magical rampage, allowing them to live a happy and peaceful life? With this thought, Darya flashes a brilliant smile like sunshine at her reflection in the mirror. However, upon reflection, she knows this is impossible. Feeling dejected, Darya lies on the ground, wondering what her brother Eclipse, who has been living with a branch family, might be doing now. She never expected Eclipse to suddenly appear before her. Just 5 minutes earlier, Darya had been leisurely eating a croissant when she heard commotion outside her door. As she approached the entrance, she encountered the man entering. Before her stood a man with silver hair and ice-blue eyes. None other than Eclipse Pestrotz. The first true meeting between the siblings, their first genuine conversation, consisted of the brother informing his sister, "Father has passed away." Upon hearing Eclipse's words, Darya felt no ripple of emotion in her heart, since her mother died shortly after giving birth to her, and her father rarely returned home due to his busy schedule. Darya, who had never received paternal affection since childhood, felt no sorrow at her father's passing. Lost in thought, Darya couldn't help but speculate. Could Eclipse's lack of paternal love be the cause of his magical rampage? Hearing Eclipse's cold voice, Darya realized she had been lost in thought. The gaze before her, examining her like merchandise, sent chills through Darya. Eclipse was considering whether she held any value for exploitation, given that she also bore the Pestrotz family name. "Aren't you going to cry?" Eclipse's words startled Darya, causing her to shake her head vigorously. She must maintain her composure, for the man before her was the most insane villain in the game, possessing overwhelming menace even in his youth. Although Eclipse's fate in the original story was well-deserved retribution, as a law-abiding citizen, she must escape this fatal ending. She must safely leave this family and seek hope for survival. However, as a child unable to control her own destiny, she must currently present herself as harmless and innocent, preventing Eclipse from finding her bothersome and eliminating her. With this thought, Darya retrieved her half-eaten croissant, nervously clutching her dress while trembling as she spoke. "I hope brother can pull himself together. Father's death must make brother very sad." So, before she could finish her words, Eclipse took the bread and raised it. Witnessing Eclipse's action, Darya fearfully closed her eyes. As a duke's daughter, she desired only to escape this luxurious life and live peacefully. Observing Darya's frightened, cowering appearance, Eclipse lowered his hand and coldly stated, "The funeral will be held tomorrow." Then he departed. Only after Eclipse left did the maid hurry to Darya's side. Seeing the young lady's shaken state, the maid felt deeply distressed. Darya continued trembling as she threw herself into the maid's embrace, and thinking of what had just transpired, her desire to escape became even more urgent. However, this required detailed planning and funding to accomplish. The most pressing need was to acquire money. While overnight wealth was impossible, she could utilize her knowledge of the game characters and future world developments as initial resources. For now, she must continue playing the role of Eclipse's foolish sister until she accumulated enough money to leave this place. Today marked her father's burial, and accompanying Darya were her brother Eclipse and her most trusted wet nurse. However, every family has its troublesome relatives, particularly when the ducal mansion resembles a large cake, causing those greedy relatives to salivate with anticipation. Especially since the ducal mansion currently lacked a person in power, leaving only 2 minor children, necessitating the appointment of a proxy administrator, which provided them with an opportunity. Even during the solemn funeral, they could barely contain their restless hearts and began plotting to divide this cake. Listening to their whispered conversations treating the ducal mansion as private property, Darya understood that these people were merely greedy beasts in human skin. Her brother surely understood this as well. Observing her cold brother, Darya wondered what he might be thinking. Could he be grieving? However, this was the perfect moment for the innocent sister to make her appearance. With this thought, Darya stepped forward and took Eclipse's hand. The moment her hand touched his, it felt truly cold. "Darya, do not take my hand without permission." Although Eclipse's words were so heartless, he did not shake off Darya's hand. At that moment, voices emerged from behind, and Eclipse coldly released Darya's hand, walking toward the back. It turned out their branch family relatives wanted to install a proxy administrator in the ducal mansion, intending to decide on this matter immediately. Observing their barely concealed smiles, Eclipse mercilessly refused, coldly stating, "This is our family's affair. Are you members of the Pestrotz ducal household?" The relatives, blinded by desire, finally realized that although Eclipse was only 16, as a transcendent he excelled in all aspects, so even without a proxy administrator, he could manage the ducal mansion excellently. When one scheme failed, those relatives devised another, beginning to discuss how Darya was so young, currently at a stage requiring care and protection, so even if Eclipse needed no proxy administrator, Darya certainly required an adult guardian. Seeing Eclipse's cold gaze, this was definitely an ominous signal. If she caused trouble for Eclipse, she would be eliminated at any moment. Darya immediately grasped Eclipse's clothing tightly, firmly declaring, "I only trust my brother. Besides my brother, I want no one else to enter the ducal mansion." However, seeing the relatives unwilling to give up and continuing to press insistently, Darya, hiding behind Eclipse, immediately employed a maiden's ultimate technique, crying out, "I don't even know you people, yet you're so shameless in wanting to enter the ducal mansion. Especially now during father's funeral, don't you know when to act appropriately?" Hearing the young lady's continuous tearful complaints, the relatives finally realized today was unsuitable for discussing such matters. After those troublesome relatives departed, Darya finally relaxed. Although they would not give up easily, she could at least breathe easier for now. With this thought, Darya looked up at Eclipse beside her. "I did well, didn't I?" However, Eclipse had not heard her inner voice, remaining cold and distant as ever. Darya had expected Eclipse to be somewhat pleased. A gust of wind swept past, carrying Eclipse's words devoid of warmth. "Now it's truly just the two of us." During the month following Darya's father's funeral, those branch family members persistently visited time and again, determined to establish a proxy administrator. Moreover, they approached Darya for discussion each time. However, knowing that agreement would lead to severe consequences, Darya decisively refused, always stating directly, "I want no one but my brother." Over time, rumors spread that the sister of the Pestrotz ducal household could not survive without her brother. Although hearing this made Darya somewhat aggrieved, reducing Eclipse's vigilance made it worthwhile. Particularly because of Darya's resolute opposition, those relatives no longer visited. After resolving this matter, leisurely Darya would gather with good friends in the garden. The woman before her, dressed in lake blue attire, was Duke Friar Brubert. Since Darya's mother died after giving birth to her, and her father was immersed in sorrow without time or energy to care for her, Friar had been her companion since birth. What a beautiful child. Though not her mother, she was like a mother to her. This visit was also prompted by concern that Darya might be saddened by her father's passing, coming to accompany her. However, seeing Darya was well, Friar relaxed and smiled. "Would you like more cookies?" Looking at this gentle woman before her, anyone would find it difficult to believe she was over 40 years old. Despite such a significant age difference, she had become close friends with Darya. Particularly remarkable was that Friar was a transcendent, possessing the ability to create massive protective barriers. Among the cold and ruthless transcendents, she stood as a clear stream, especially when Darya thought of Friar's transcendent son, Winley Brubert. However, Winley was currently in Brubert territory, with no plans to visit the capital for 4 years. These years, Friar had traveled between 2 places caring for both her and Winley, which must have been exhausting. This inevitably led Darya to recall Friar's past. While adversity builds resilience, the scars left behind are difficult to erase. However peaceful the Duke's present life appeared, she had endured countless hardships in the past. Before the Duke became a transcendent, a fire not only claimed her husband and beautiful appearance, but left her heart barren. This explained why Friar always covered her entire body, even wearing gloves on her hands. However, fate works in mysterious ways, and those dim, lifeless eyes gradually regained their light upon seeing angel-like Darya. That barren heart slowly sprouted a small flower while caring for adorable Darya. Today, they sit together laughing and discussing life's trivial matters, and quietly enjoying moments of tranquility. Even though they have never held hands or embraced, those familiar times together secretly comfort their wounded hearts during quiet nights. Therefore, When Friar asked Darya how did it feel meeting your brother, Darya directly replied, "Eclipse is too frightening." Friar understood Darya's fear, as she comprehended how terrifying transcendence could be. 30 years ago, Transcendent Duke Artis experienced a magical rampage, slaughtering all palace magicians in a single night. Although no further Transcendent rampage incidents occurred under the Emperor's suppression and dual policy control, Transcendence remained a source of fear. However, having played the game, Darya knew rampage incidents would soon occur. Though she did not know the exact timing, she remembered it happening at a banquet. And following this incident, subsequent magical rampages would become increasingly severe. Even the royal family would be unable to prevent them. Only Darya knew this information. She had entered the game yet seemed to exist outside it, experiencing endless solitude. With such an adorable sister, what time will you return home? When learning origami for the first time, she would immediately present her brother with a hand-folded frog. On her first day learning to paint, she would give her brother a hand-drawn sketch. She would even quietly peek outside the door while her brother worked. When her brother noticed her, she would smile brilliantly. She would greet her brother daily and wish to dine with him every day, like an innocent, adorable sister who constantly cherished her brother. However, that cold brother consistently rejected her. "I have no wishes to make upon frogs. Did you draw a demon?" Ignoring Darya's smile, repeatedly refusing Darya's attempts at closeness. Continuously rejected, Darya would sometimes make wishes to the frog. Let Eclipse trip in front of everyone. Sadly for Darya, nothing happened. Through all these efforts, perhaps Darya genuinely wanted to grow closer to her brother. Particularly when Duke Friar mentioned, Transcendents are lonely and solitary beings. Why not try getting closer to Eclipse? However, Darya's primary motivation remained preparing for escape. Yet when Darya made flower crowns on the grass, she still thought of giving them to her brother. Seeing the young lady's fondness for the young duke, nearby servant Pogi cheered Darya on. "Master Eclipse will surely love it." Hearing this, Darya gave the completed flower crown to the servant. "It looks beautiful, Pogi." Afterwards, Darya created many more flower crowns, distributing them to other servants. However, the most important person, Eclipse, had not yet received one. With this realization, Darya suddenly remembered a secret setting from Ouroboros Labyrinth, Eclipse's hay fever, his allergy to pollen. Based on this knowledge, Darya reluctantly set aside the completed flower crown. This scene was coincidentally witnessed by Eclipse from upstairs. "Having such an adorable sister must make you very happy?" Eclipse merely responded coldly. "This is not amusing at all. Remove that flower crown from your head." In reality, within the Pestillos family, Eclipse could only exist in shadows while Darya, as a normal person, could live in sunlight. Initially, he considered eliminating Darya if she proved bothersome. However, Darya's constant chatter, tireless gift-giving of small toys, and persistent attempts to get closer to him seemed to soften Eclipse's heart somewhat. Meanwhile, Darya was secretly accumulating her private savings. For this purpose, Darya enlisted her wet nurse's help, exchanging gorgeous dresses for money, trading exquisite accessories for cash, gradually building her small treasury bit by bit. However, the maids all noticed the young lady's diminishing wardrobe, forcing Darya to find alternative methods for earning money. Hearing this, Friar was utterly astonished by Darya's actions. "Goodness, you're secretly preparing funds. Just how many more surprises do you intend to give me?" However, this is extremely important to me. Seeing how seriously Darya regarded this matter, Friar suggested, "The ducal mansion's library contains many valuable books you might examine." Finding this suggestion excellent, Darya bid farewell to Friar and immediately headed to the library. "I'll hide these precious books and sell them after they appreciate in value." However, before she could implement her mischievous plan, Eclipse discovered her. "Do you think the same way, Darya?" Seeing Eclipse's dark expression, Darya felt terrified. Subsequently, her wet nurse came to treat the injury on Darya's leg. It turned out that Darya, upon entering the library, had not been interested in the lower-level books, but was more attracted to the upper-level volumes. For this purpose, she brought a ladder to examine the value of the books above. However, she happened to browse through books about transcendence. The contents primarily discussed transcendent magical rampages and dangerous behaviors. Curiosity led Darya to select a book titled The Nature of Transcendence. Darya opened it not for its content, but to assess its value. As she had anticipated, this was a first edition with high collectible value. However, just as Darya was celebrating, the next second she was startled by a voice behind her. Particularly upon hearing that death god-like cold voice. "What are you doing here?" The entire person, guilt-ridden like a thief, fell directly from the ladder. "It seems you enjoy sneaking in here secretly." That undisguised disgust hit her directly, enveloping Darya entirely in shadow, causing her to tremble uncontrollably. Especially when Eclipse picked up the book and slowly recited, "These dangerous beings cannot be called human. They are brutal and cruel existences." So this is how it's recorded. Do you think the same way? Hearing Eclipse's cold words tinged with cruelty, countless voices in Darya's mind screamed, "I'm doomed, I'm doomed." However, her brain continued working, and she finally said carefully, "Friar is my transcendent friend, so I would never harbor such thoughts." Moreover, since my brother is also a transcendent, I wanted to understand more about my brother by reading these books. Understanding by reading these books? Speaking as he approached step by step, pushing the book toward Darya. He said coldly, "This is precisely why you can never understand me." Seeing Darya shake her head, it seems you cannot comprehend what I'm saying. Do you know about our grandfather? Do you know how he died? Due to a magical rampage, he not only completely destroyed the Pestrotz ducal mansion, but also intended to spare no one, including his daughter, our mother. From then on, our mother feared transcendents, despising and loathing them, even her own son. It turned out Eclipse was the strongest villain in the game, spending his entire life seeking love and being loved. However, no one loved him, no one understood him, and he bore the shackles of being a transcendent throughout his life, ultimately dying from magical rampage. From childhood, he was a lonely and solitary existence. From birth, he was resented by his own mother because he was a transcendent. Everyone knew transcendents were cold-blooded, intelligent monsters who needed no love or care to grow independently into individuals of exceptional ability. Therefore, continuously ignored Eclipse could only companion with his toys. When he turned 3, a friend's child of his mother came to the mansion to play. From the beginning, the child chattered incessantly, "You're a transcendent." Upon seeing the toy in his hands, the child rudely took it away. The consistently indifferent Eclipse, upon seeing his toy broken, could not suppress the violence in his heart and pushed the little boy down. This scene was witnessed by his mother and her friend. It was said the boy broke his leg after falling down the stairs. His mother, already displeased with him, became even more disgusted by his existence. "You planned all of this." Eclipse, who had endured cold violence, awaited the arrival of new life in the ducal mansion. His mother, previously diagnosed as infertile, gave birth to Darya. His mother declared, "This is a gift from God." After Darya's birth, he was further excluded from the ducal household, sent to branch family territory, under the pretense of gaining experience as a successor. Even after his mother's death, he remained trapped there. This was because his mother left dying words for his father, never bring him back to the mansion. Only after both parents' consecutive deaths could he return to the estate. Looking at his mother's photograph in the frame, Eclipse suddenly smiled coldly. Regarding this family that had abandoned him through such ruthless means, he would never forgive them. Repeatedly telling himself, "Not even Darya is acceptable." Therefore, even upon hearing Darya tell the maid his only brother is the best person, even though Darya tirelessly approached him time and again, even though Darya repeatedly displayed that foolish smile, he could never possibly love her. Eclipse repeatedly told himself, "I will never forgive. I will never love her." However, even Eclipse understood that controlling his already wavering heart, despite telling himself over and over, could not change that increasingly melting heart. Before she knew it, Darya had been living with her brother for a year, yet their relationship had not improved, particularly after the library incident. Eclipse became even more cold and ruthless, completely unapproachable. This troubled Darya so much that the flowers in her hair seemed ready to fall. With no other option, Darya sought out butler Sebastian. Sebastian inquired, "How can we make your brother happier?" Upon hearing the young lady's question, the butler also became emotional. "Miss Darya, you've already done wonderfully." He even shed tears while speaking. Seeing the butler still immersed in his weeping, Darya could only turn to her best friend, Duke Friar, to ask, "How can I make my brother happy?" Upon hearing Darya's words, Duke Friar had servants bring paper and pen, then handed the written paper to Darya. If Eclipse is to become the true Duke Pestrotz, he needs another transcendent to certify that he possesses rational and calm thinking abilities. Although Friar's suggestion was excellent, considering it might negatively impact Friar, Darya declined. Friar smiled gently. "This is merely a formal procedure with no real significance. I hope this might help you and your brother grow closer." Hearing Friar's thoughtful consideration, Darya gripped the paper tightly, tears flowing uncontrollably. After returning home, Darya immediately went to Eclipse's office, her face beaming with joyful smile. "Brother, I did well, didn't I? With this we can—" However, before Darya could finish speaking, Eclipse coldly stated, "I already received His Majesty the Emperor's recognition yesterday, so this is unnecessary." Instantly deflated, Darya wilted like a mushroom. "I'm sorry, I thought you would be pleased." As soon as she finished speaking, the paper in Darya's hand was snatched away. "This might prove useful elsewhere. You may leave now." After departing, although Darya believed Eclipse wouldn't carelessly use it elsewhere, she felt uneasy and secretly retrieved the paper. While leisurely reading with peace of mind, Eclipse suddenly opened her bedroom door. His Majesty the Emperor has agreed to Eclipse's audience. One second Darya was congratulating her brother. The next second, hearing she must also go, she was completely stunned. Never had she witnessed such possessive behavior from her brother. During the journey, simply because his sister boarded the carriage without letting her brother assist, Eclipse spent the entire trip frowning and sulking. However, she also failed to let her brother assist when disembarking, causing Eclipse to stride toward the palace without looking back. Today marked Eclipse and Darya's audience with the Emperor. The current Emperor was Transcendent Duncan Alexander II, possessing the ability to perceive human hearts. Through physical contact, he could discern whether someone harbored goodwill or malice toward him. He maintained rationality and composure throughout his life until death. He served as a golden supporting character in the novel, and the one who would ultimately destroy Duke Pestrotz. The Emperor summoned Eclipse and Darya today to present Eclipse with the appointment document as Duke Pestrotz, and to meet Eclipse's sister Darya. Why would Eclipse have such an adorable sister? How truly enviable. Transcendents are solitary beings, but having Darya by your side will comfort your lonely heart. Hearing this, Eclipse coldly replied, "Your Majesty, that is merely your misconception." The Emperor simply stated mildly, "It may be a misconception. However, I can sense such emotions." Then he changed the subject. "Thank you for traveling such a distance, Darya." Seeing the Emperor's extended hand, Darya understood this was typically a courteous farewell handshake, but in reality, it was the Emperor testing whether the person before him harbored malicious intent. However, after Darya placed her hand in his, 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes, half an hour later, and the Emperor still had not released her hand. Particularly when the Emperor finally let go, his face displayed complete shock, and he stared at his palm as if he had lost his soul. The Emperor, who had appeared quite shocked and businesslike moments before, suddenly transformed into a matchmaker, setting up romantic connections between Darya and his princes. How can such an adorable girl like Darya still lack a fiancé? What do you think of my sons? Darya was also shocked by the Emperor's words. "Thank you for your Majesty's praise. You must be joking." The Emperor replied meaningfully, "I'm not joking, I'm quite serious. I have 2 sons around your age. My eldest son Leonard is also the heir. And, though somewhat foolish, he's a good child. My second son, Cedric, enjoys wandering, but he's not a bad child either." Sensing that the Emperor truly attached great importance to this matter, Darya couldn't help but worry. If she became engaged, she would become the Crown Prince's fiancé, making it impossible to fulfill her wish of escaping the imperial capital and living freely under an assumed name in the countryside. Moreover, this proposal would benefit the Pestrotz family, and Eclipse would certainly not give it up. At that moment, a voice came from behind. "Your Majesty, Darya will not be engaged. My sister has no intention of becoming engaged." Seeing the siblings reject so firmly, the Emperor could only say helplessly, "Very well, I truly wish to see Darya become my daughter-in-law." Darya simply smiled and said, "Thank you for your Majesty's favor and appreciation. We shall meet again next time." After they left, Duncan couldn't help but look at his palm again. Everyone envied the Transcendents' exceptional talents and abilities, yet resisted the reality of becoming Transcendents themselves. Their formidable combat power laid the foundation for the Empire's establishment and consolidation. But after peace arrived, they became feared beings lurking in the shadows. Even the Emperor would wear a gentle mask, pretending to be a normal person, though behind the facade lay a tormented soul. The original sin of possessing power beyond human limits made him want to destroy everything. But because of those he loved, he suppressed his destructive urges and became a refined gentleman. However, while constantly wandering in hell unable to find liberation, he entered heaven in an instant. The moment he grasped Darya's hand, all that noise and clamor completely departed from him, like a soul soaking comfortably and naturally in seawater. His spirit found purification, his mind ceased its wandering. This was the Empire's saving light he had awaited so long, but after years of waiting in the abyss, he began to doubt whether this was real. Yet, he was more concerned about the Pestrotz siblings. At this age, Eclipse's cold heart would surely resist his true inner desires, causing harm to the one he cherished. If this continued, Eclipse might do something he would regret. Meanwhile, Darya couldn't keep up with Eclipse and had to run hurriedly. Though inwardly sulking that brother won't wait for her, she still said, "Thank you, brother. I truly didn't want to be engaged." Eclipse didn't look back. His Majesty has always had that capricious personality. If you take the bait, you'll become his plaything. The more foolish someone is, the easier they fall for it. This made Darya mentally add another grudge to her list. "However, I didn't expect you to refuse. Many people want to become the Crown Prince's consort." Hearing Eclipse's words, Darya said breathlessly, "I only want to stay with brother for a long time." Upon hearing Darya's words, Eclipse said coldly, "Don't misunderstand. I simply didn't want the Pestrotz to be treated as fools." Just as Darya finished saying "I'm sorry," she accidentally twisted her ankle and fell to the ground. Seeing his foolish sister sitting on the ground, Eclipse couldn't help but sigh, then walked over to Darya. "You're utterly hopeless." But he still lifted Darya and held her against his chest. Startled, Darya fluttered like a bird. So Eclipse had to say fiercely, "You'll fall if you keep this up. Stay still." Hearing Eclipse's words, Darya finally calmed down and wrapped her arms around Eclipse's neck. The evening's afterglow fell upon the siblings' shoulders, and in the quiet corridor only the sound of footsteps echoed. She truly wished time could stop at this moment. Though Eclipse had a terrible temper, and was the ultimate villain in the novel, he had just helped her refuse the Emperor's request and even carried her. Though she had always harbored many complaints about Eclipse's petty misdeeds, Darya had to admit at this moment that she had grown somewhat fond of Eclipse. But developing feelings would be troublesome, since she was destined to escape from here. While enjoying this warm moment on the road, Darya couldn't help saying, "Brother, I think you'll grow very, very tall." "What nonsense are you spouting? I'm just making conversation." Such useless chatter. At this moment, though Eclipse's words remained as sharp and heartless as ever, Darya felt close to him, leaning against Eclipse's shoulder and laughing happily. It would be wonderful if things could always be like this. I'm so happy that brother can hold me. If I keep liking brother, surely brother will come to like me too someday? Those girlish sentiments spoke of endless attachment to her brother. This long-awaited sweet time made Darya unconsciously develop some anticipation for the future, but it also touched Eclipse's forbidden territory. How could the perpetually cold and ruthless Eclipse ever admit he liked Darya, that he loved Darya? He said icily, "Do I like you?" Then he threw Darya harshly to the ground. The brother who had only been somewhat sharp-tongued before now seemed like an enemy, wanting to destroy Darya completely. "I could never possibly like you." After saying this, he walked toward the palace exit without looking back. This left Darya still wondering what had happened. But thinking of herself just moments ago, foolishly thinking it would be wonderful if things could always be like this, what an idiot she was, and now an even more wretched idiot. The wronged Darya almost wanted to cry, but she still smiled bravely. "Very well, brother." Then silently cursed Eclipse in her heart. "Step on a banana peel." Like a little sun always radiating brilliant smiles, Darya decided this time to ignore that cold, nasty brother, and walked huffily toward the carriage, plopping down in Eclipse's seat. Though doing something she'd never dared before felt satisfying, she still secretly glanced at Eclipse from the corner of her eye. "He won't hit me, will he?" Eclipse simply sat across from her in silence. Regarding his angry sister, who needed 2 hugs to feel better, Eclipse acted like a blind and cold-hearted demon king, gazing at the sky at a 45-degree angle. So the 2 siblings sat with one head facing east and the other west, neither acknowledging the other. But while the carriage was traveling normally, Darya heard a harsh creaking sound, and saw many cracks appearing on the carriage. She remembered Eclipse had been gripping the spot continuously during the earlier carriage ride. Could the cracks have started forming then? Before Darya could react, the cracks rapidly expanded, until the section where Darya sat separated from the carriage. "Brother! Brother!" In the critical moment, Darya called out to her brother again and again, her hand constantly reaching toward Eclipse. When she saw that her brother didn't grasp her hand, she recalled what Eclipse had just said to her, "I could never possibly like you." At that moment, she realized her brother probably wouldn't save her, and the disheartened Darya slowly drew back her outstretched hand. She hadn't expected that simply visiting the palace would lead to this. The heartbroken Darya shed tears. "Am I really going to?" At that moment, Eclipse finally reached out to embrace his sun, moon, and stars. He had clearly told himself that as long as he rejected Darya's approach, remained cold to Darya's affection, and ignored Darya's smiles, he could keep deceiving himself. He was a solitary existence who loved no one and was loved by no one. But no matter how many hurtful words he spoke, it couldn't change the fact that he loved Darya. No matter how many detestable things he did, it couldn't change the conclusion that he liked Darya. So when he thought it would be better to let Darya die like this, so no one would ever make him waver, make him hesitate, make him hope for the future again, the malice from the depths of his soul had already corroded him. He began by wanting to eliminate that troublesome child, then later felt like letting her slowly drag him into corruption. But at some point, his heart gradually became frantic, especially when he had expected Darya to take his hand, but she instead supported another man's hand to board the carriage. He shouldn't have such pitiful and hateful emotions, yet day after day he remained obsessed with these illusory feelings. So in this life-threatening moment, he stumbled out from among the many lies, only to embrace the most important person. Yet he couldn't even touch his sister's face. He couldn't accept that with his tormented past, he would fall in love with someone from the Pestrotz family again. Where should he place these bitter and sorrowful feelings? In her days, Darya only remembered that Eclipse had saved her, but didn't recall what she had said to Eclipse earlier, thinking it was all a dream. When she opened her eyes, she saw her friend Duke Friar. Happy Darya smiled and asked, "How did you come to be here? I heard you nearly had an accident, so I rushed over to see you." And Eclipse has also become the true Duke Pestrotz. That's wonderful. It seems your trip went very smoothly. Hearing this, Darya shook her head glumly. "This time brother saved me, but he hesitated for so long that I thought brother wouldn't save me. It seems your brother's heart still isn't honest enough. Though he says he dislikes you, he still rescued you. After all, transcendents generally handle matters from a perspective of maximizing benefits, though there's also this possibility, he saved you for greater future benefits. However, this can't be judged as the sole reason for saving you, since transcendents are also human, and will act recklessly for the emotions in their hearts." Watching the Duke's gradually melancholy expression, Darya thought of Eclipse. Her brother would occasionally show such sad and lonely expressions too. But the Duke suddenly smiled again. "I used to have quite a terrible temper." "Really? Truly?" In his reckless youth, she was an absolute demon king, rejecting anyone's approach and never approaching anyone himself. As a transcendent, she believed no one could understand her, even keeping her husband at arm's length. But through her husband's patience and care, her hardened heart slowly began to melt. When she looked back, she found she had gradually integrated into society and could treat others with gentleness. So people can change, Darya. Never forget this point. Watching the Duke's warm smile, even while wearing a mask, Darya could feel that gentle soul. But knowing the plot, Darya realized that in the future, Eclipse was destined to experience magical power rampage. Speaking of which, it was strange. Why hadn't Duke Freya appeared after 4 years? Instead, his son Winley Brubert began participating in imperial affairs. Thinking of this, Darya couldn't help worrying. Could it be that Duke Freya would be gone after 4 years? But she immediately dismissed the thought. That was absolutely impossible. At this time, Freya said, "Since Eclipse has become Duke Pestrotz, there will surely be an inheritance ball, and we'll meet again then." Hearing this, Darya said happily, "Really? I must send you an invitation." Since the carriage incident, the relationship between Darya and Eclipse began to ease somewhat. Eclipse would have breakfast with Darya, though they sat rather far apart. But Darya felt that her brother wasn't as cold as before, and he had saved her. So she decided to open her heart a little bit, though only a tiny bit. After all, he's my brother, isn't he? Even when she smiled at Eclipse and he would still frown, she now wanted to show her brother her most adorable side. With this thought, Darya carried a plate of cut mutton and said happily to her brother, "Brother, this is really delicious, you must eat more." She then quickly transferred the mutton from her plate to Eclipse's. Darya was secretly pleased. She absolutely hated mutton, so she gave it all to her brother, hee. Indeed, every family has a picky little ancestor who leaves food, and a long-suffering servant who eats the leftovers. But Eclipse remained expressionless, bypassing the mutton Darya had given him, and silently eating the meat that was originally on his plate. But Darya, who had weathered many storms, wouldn't retreat because of this small difficulty. Seeing Dahlia's depression was so intense she even clenched her fists, Eclipse became somewhat worried. Would his sister resort to violence because he didn't eat the meat? How frightening. Seeing Eclipse's expression had become strange, Darya immediately changed her hard fist into a sweetheart gesture. This is even less appetizing than the fist from before. Eclipse glanced once and was so startled he silently returned to eating his meat. This left Darya bewildered in the wind. "I really want to evaporate. This is too embarrassing." Just how unbearable was it that he looked at me with such eyes? Unable to figure it out, Darya could only run to the mirror and practice various heart gestures. This one's not right, this one seems a bit off too, and this one looks somewhat strange. After multiple adjustments, Darya felt that she looked absolutely adorable making these gestures. No matter what Darya does, she's very cute. But if I want to show brother, I should test it on more people first. The first person was the crybaby butler. I really like Sebastian. Seeing the young lady's adorable heart gesture, the butler's legs went weak. It's just too cute. But if you do this to outsiders, you might very well be kidnapped. After saying this, he couldn't help but start sobbing. However, this confirmed that Darya's heart gestures were indeed very kawaii. Afterward, Darya activated harem mode, firing heart gestures in all directions at the servants in the courtyard. It's truly irresistible, like eating pop rocks. My heart keeps going thump-thump, and my face is all red. I knew it. No one can resist my super invincible cute heart-shaped charm. Now in this mansion, I am the queen. She laughed like a villain. It was both thrilling and fun. Watching the servants blush and say, "Miss, please do it one more time." The generous Darya had to fulfill the servant's small request. Eclipse happened to witness this scene. "Where's a hole? Where's a hole? Let me hide quickly. This is so mortifying. I never imagined you had such hobbies, doing such flirtatious gestures so casually to people." Darya, embarrassed enough to dig out a 3-bedroom apartment with her toes, realized she really wasn't suited for this. While Darya was playing around with the servants, Eclipse was working tirelessly to handle the mountain of accumulated documents. But no matter how busy Eclipse was, he couldn't miss the ball celebrating the new duke's succession. Darya was practicing ballroom dancing in preparation for the upcoming ball. Besides this, she also needed to select a suitable lady's maid to accompany her to the ball. Though Darya was most fond of her wet nurse. As the legitimate daughter of the Pestrotz, one of the empire's 4 top families, she had to possess treatment second only to royalty. Even her lady's maid had to be selected from a peer of lower families and promoted. But what troubled Darya was that she had no social connections, much less close friends her own age. However, the most important thing currently was practicing dance, since her first dance would definitely be with Eclipse. Seeing the young lady finally able to complete an entire dance, the maid couldn't help but applaud happily. "That was absolutely wonderful, miss, and perfectly timed with the Duke's presence, bringing him such a perfect dance." Only then did the absorbed Darya notice that Eclipse was actually nearby. Darya felt somewhat embarrassed at first, but then noticed Eclipse kept staring at her without saying anything, making her feel rather shy. Then the maid's voice came from behind. "With such a good opportunity, why don't you two practice the dance steps together?" What a challenging suggestion. Darya had only succeeded once, yet she was supposed to practice with Eclipse, so she could only pray in her heart that Eclipse would refuse. "Please, absolutely not." But Eclipse still looked at her coldly, even frowning impatiently. The cold, sweating Darya could only embrace her brother. "Then let's give it a try." As the melodious piano music began, Eclipse and Darya danced gracefully. Initially, she thought it would be awkward and clumsy, but as Eclipse led her into the rhythmic melody, she became immersed in it. Looking at Eclipse's ethereal countenance, Darya couldn't help but marvel. Eclipse dances so wonderfully, it seems there's nothing he can't accomplish. Thinking these thoughts, Darya became increasingly distracted, her dance steps began to falter, and she finally accidentally stepped on Eclipse's foot. Could this be the legendary bad start? Would her brief life end here? But the will to survive still made her attempt to struggle, brother. Doesn't it hurt? Being stepped on by you is nothing. After saying this, he took Darya's hand again and continued practicing the dance. This time they were like butterflies dancing among flowers. Those graceful steps, that light and airy bearing were intoxicating. And like lotus emerging from water, creating lotus with each step, ethereal as immortals, drawing people deep within. When the song ended, their coordination was seamless, having perfectly completed this dance. The maid also praised them continuously. The Duke is truly omnipotent. Miss has improved tremendously. With more practice, it will surely become even more perfect. After the maid left, Eclipse and Darya were left in awkward company. What should I say at this moment? I'm still concerned about that step I took earlier. Thinking this, Darya carefully touched Eclipse's palm. If you want to apologize, forget it. No, I just wanted to ask why brother had time to come over. You probably didn't come to watch me dance, right? I came about your lady's maid. His Majesty has already selected your lady's maid. Though I also made inquiries for you in various ways, but surely His Majesty's choice should be more suitable for you. What? What did you say? Nothing much. You don't think I would let you, someone bearing the Pestrotz name, attend the ball alone without a maid, all by yourself, do you? It was then that Darya looked up at her brother. He actually acknowledged me as a member of the Pestrotz family. She had never imagined that Eclipse would consider things to this extent for her. At this moment, her heart felt warm. However, she has matters to attend to and cannot meet you beforehand, so she asked me to convey her apologies. She will meet you at the ball. By the way, her name is Andreisha, from a powerless Viscount family. But since His Majesty selected her for you, there must be his reasons. The moment she heard the name, Darya's entire body froze. Because Andreisha was the game's beloved female protagonist. Yet now she had become her maid. She was a top assassin cultivated by a criminal organization, the terrifying Night Rose. But after the Emperor destroyed the criminal organization and rescued her, she became the most loyal Rose by the Emperor's side. To legitimize her background, the Emperor gave her the noble title Andreisha, and she used this identity to enter high society, completing various tasks for the Emperor. In this process, she became a true heartthrob, with countless men becoming infatuated and crazed over her. But this part of the plot was supposed to happen 3 years later. Yet now, due to Darya's unexpected appearance, the plot had changed. The game's beloved female protagonist had now become Darya's lady's maid. At the same time, her brother was originally supposed to awaken his magical power 2 years later, and to enhance the family's reputation, he would continuously overuse magic power for the following year. Then when his spirit was extremely close to collapse and his heart was in extreme anguish, he encountered Andreisha. She came like the wind, scattering the light of hope, easing Eclipse's taut heartstrings. But facing Andreisha, who sympathized with him, his heart was torn between love and hate. Even love was hatred. But now, Eclipse hadn't awakened his magical power yet. If they met prematurely, even Darya couldn't imagine how things would develop. However, being able to meet Andreisha still made Darya very excited. Because in the game Ouroboros Labyrinth, her favorite was the great beauty Andreisha. Just thinking about it was a bit thrilling. As the ball drew nearer, Darya couldn't help feeling somewhat nervous. To avoid unexpected situations, she planned to review the 4 major mad dogs from the game who were obsessed with the female protagonist and went crazy for her. Number 1, Green Dog Acelus, an obsessive madman second only to Eclipse, danger level 3 stars. Currently hiding his transcendent identity, serving as an attendant by the Emperor's side, possessing powerful divine power, capable of saving those near death. In the later stages, he left the palace and became the Pope of the neighboring Sacred Empire. However, to possess Andreisha, he not only kidnapped her but even started wars. As for number 2, Black Dog Morris Artis, and number 3, Golden Dog Winley Brubert, they weren't currently in the capital, so she wouldn't consider them for now. Now that Andreisha was entering high society prematurely, even with Darya's God's eye view, she couldn't predict future developments. Forget it, never mind. The troubled Darya rubbed her head and threw the paper in her hand aside. At the same time, clever Darya used this ball to accumulate another small treasury for herself, converting all the budget Eclipse had given her into gold. Thinking of the free and wealthy life in the future, Darya couldn't help but chuckle. What are you laughing about? Only then, noticing she was still eating, Darya smiled and said, because I'm really looking forward to the ball. This is the first ball I'll attend in my life. Expecting her brother to mock her coldly, Darya instead saw Eclipse look at her expressionlessly for a while, then lower his head to continue eating. Even this subtle change was noticed by Darya. Eclipse had changed. Though only slightly, she could clearly sense that Eclipse had lowered his guard around her. She seemed to not dislike Eclipse as much anymore, but thinking that Eclipse would become a crazed villain in the future, her heart inevitably clenched tight. Indeed, someday I still have to leave here, leave the capital. Because as the plot developed, it wouldn't be long before a Transcendence magical rampage incident occurred at a ball. It's far too dangerous. But with so many balls held each year, it definitely won't be this one. The ball arrived as scheduled, and they attended in formal attire. Early in the morning, the maids were eager. to pull the young lady from her bed for grooming and dressing. The sky blue dress looked fresh and natural on Darya. "Miss looks absolutely beautiful. You'll surely outshine everyone and become the most dazzling presence at the gathering." "That's enough, you're really embarrassing me. Since you're finished getting me ready, hurry up and get out." After closing the door, Darya couldn't help but come to the mirror again. So adorable indeed. In her boredom, Darya opened her little treasure box to look at her private savings. Just as she was about to look at her notes, she discovered an additional page of unfamiliar text. "They gaze at the stars from the abyss, while you bring the sun, moon, and stars from the clouds. You are the only one in this world who can redeem them, destined to wear stars and moon, bringing countless rays of light." This was text that suddenly appeared in Dahlia's notebook, but she herself was still struggling in the abyss. How could she redeem others and illuminate them? "What are you doing?" Darya turned around to see Eclipse had arrived. A man like Violet, with indescribable noble bearing, his ice-colored eyes were utterly mesmerizing. But with such appearance, how could he possibly be 16? This radiant beauty is truly blinding. "What are you holding in your hand?" Startled, Darya quickly hid the notebook behind her back. "Do you think I'm interested in your utterly ordinary diary? So what did brother come to find me for?" Seeing Eclipse extend his hand, "I should have entered with Lady Matthew." "Darya Pestrotz, I am your ball partner, and I shall escort you into the venue this time." Thinking of that awkward scene, Darya felt worried, though her face showed a cheerful smile. "Then let's go together." She placed her hand in Eclipse's palm. "I'm so happy, brother. Worthy of being a top family succession ball, first-class decorations and arrangements, with first-class guests wearing expensive attire. So brilliantly beautiful and magnificent." Eclipse, as the highly anticipated new Duke Pestrotz, was immediately surrounded upon entering. At this time, not seeing Andreisha, Darya spotted Duke Friar. Duke Friar, in a black lace court dress, was absolutely stunning, indescribably elegant and noble. The two exchanged glances across the crowd and waved in acknowledgement. "Congratulations, Duke Pestrotz. Please take good care of your adorable sister from now on. Thank you for your congratulations. I will take good care of her." After Friar left, seeing Darya still gazing into the distance. "Do you want to go to the Brewberts?" "Well, yes." Hearing this, Eclipse's aura turned cold. "The first ball music is about to begin." "Oh right, I'm supposed to dance the first dance with Eclipse. Don't be so dramatic." My apologies, Your Grace. Due to the orchestra, the first piece will be delayed by an hour." "Is that so?" Upon hearing this, Eclipse's entire demeanor darkened. "You can wander around during this time. But don't leave the venue, because I'll introduce you to Andreisha shortly." Watching his sister skip away without looking back, Eclipse also turned and left coldly. He was handsome and dashing, with striking good looks, yet he preferred wandering the world over romantic pursuits. He was the Emperor's most beloved, yet also most troublesome second son. To locate his child, the Emperor had no choice but to attend Eclipse's succession ball to gather information. Upon his entrance, crowds immediately swarmed around him, forming an impenetrable circle. However, what no one anticipated was that Acellus, the second-ranked psychotic antagonist from the game, had also arrived. Though he appeared refined and gentle, Darya, who understood the game's narrative, knew that beneath his benevolent facade lurked an unmistakable heart of cruelty. Just as she was contemplating Acellus's purpose for being there, she witnessed Andreisha approaching, her cold and enchanting features absolutely captivating. A frost rose that one yearned to treasure and protect. "Darya Pestrotz!" Upon hearing Eclipse's call, Darya snapped out of her entranced state. "My apologies, brother." She then quickly moved to Eclipse's side, placing her hand upon her brother's palm. "Your Majesty, we are deeply grateful for your presence. What brings you here today?" "I came to celebrate your investiture ceremony, and beyond that, I hope to see if that fool Cedric had found his way here. Incidentally, I have documents for you. Darya, you may go introduce yourself to Andreisha." The two gazed at each other intently, one's eyes filled with admiration, the other's reflecting the cold crimson moon. "Greetings, Miss Darya. I am Andreisha of the Parola Viscountcy. Please wait a moment, I shall offer you a proper greeting shortly." "Very well, certainly." Struck by such beauty, Darya stared foolishly at Andreisha, her cheeks flushing red. Nevertheless, Darya caught a trace of something unusual about Andreisha. Despite sharing the same bloodline, Andreisha's profound eyes contained only endless darkness and desolate ruins. From birth, she had been used as a tool by criminal organizations, performing assassinations and espionage work. Later, she endured the torment of the Transcendent's possessive obsessions. Yet even so, she extended a helping hand to Transcendence on the verge of collapse. She was both the first love and the one that got away. Though dwelling in darkness, she illuminated everyone around her, yet could never save herself. If only I could help her somehow. Just as this thought crossed her mind, Darya noticed Acellus, inexplicably staring at a wine glass with intense scrutiny. This bizarre behavior was truly incomprehensible. Meanwhile, the Emperor awkwardly requested, "Might I be permitted to search for Cedric here? Once I find him, I shall take him away immediately." Eclipse, though initially speechless at the request, could only sigh, "Please, try your best." Upon hearing this, the Emperor channeled his magical power and began seeking Cedric's hiding place. The atmosphere in the hall quickly grew tense, since transcendents could conceal their presence using magic. A wide-range search was necessary to detect magical fluctuations and locate the hidden individual. Before long, the Emperor strode purposefully toward a corner. "So this is where you've been hiding. You took somewhat longer than usual this time." With those words, his dark brown hair began to fade, gradually revealing brilliant golden locks as radiant as the sun. He was Cedric, the second son of the current Emperor of the Alexander Empire. Darya actually blushed upon meeting Cedric for the first time, even covering her eyes with her hands. Finally found the rebellious second son, the Emperor could only scold him briefly, then insisted Cedric obediently return with him, while apologizing to Eclipse for disrupting his ball. Yet Cedric acted as if nothing had happened, cheerfully greeting Eclipse, if only Acellas could keep his mouth shut. Observing the confrontational scene in the distance, Darya easily deduced that Acellas had betrayed his location. In the game, Acellas appeared angelic and gentle as Jade, yet maintained a poor relationship exclusively with Cedric. However, watching Cedric, Darya genuinely thought he truly was the most handsome man. Even surrounded by so many attractive men and women, he still managed to stand out as the most dazzling presence. Sensing the gaze from behind, Cedric turned around, causing the flustered Darya to immediately cover her eyes, planning to play blind on the spot. "Don't look at me!" When Darya finally lowered her hands and looked at Cedric with flushed cheeks, Cedric simply smiled and said to Darya, "You must be Eclipse's sister, Darya. Cedric, come here immediately!" Hearing the Emperor's voice filled with tremendous anger, Cedric had no choice but to hurry to the Emperor's side. After the Emperor's departure, the somewhat exhausted siblings decided to postpone their dance for another time. Duke Darya Pestrotz. Hearing the voice behind her, Darya turned to see Andreisha approaching. "From now on, I shall serve as your personal attendant. Please treat me favorably." Only then did Darya remember to observe Eclipse's reaction. Watching her brother continuously while Eclipse stared directly back at her. "Are you dissatisfied? How could that be possible?" "That's good then." Even Darya, who could be somewhat oblivious at times, had to acknowledge that something was very wrong here. This differed far too greatly from the original story. Eclipse had barely glanced at Andreisha even once. But if Eclipse wasn't infatuated with Andreisha, then wouldn't Eclipse avoid the magical outburst? And surely her fatal destiny could be changed as well. Darya's eyes sparkled with joy at the thought. My apologies, Miss Andreisha. I was just thinking about other matters. If you dislike me, I shall work even harder." Andreisha's smile was truly beautiful, worthy of being my most beloved beauty. At this thought, Darya grasped Andreisha's hand. "How could I not like you? I'm truly delighted that you've come to be my attendant. Also, please just call me Darya from now on." "Thank you for saying so. Please call me by my name directly as well." At this moment, the friendship between these two meeting for the first time began to slowly develop. Having gained a new close friend, Darya wanted to introduce Andreisha to Duke Friar. Finally locating Duke Friar, Darya was about to approach happily, but discovered that Duke Friar's condition seemed problematic. She was swaying unsteadily and had collapsed to the ground. People only realize how precious something is after they lose it. The wineglass slipped and shattered on the floor, and Duke Friar also collapsed unsteadily to the ground. So when Darya noticed Duke Friar's condition was wrong, and attempted to approach her, Duke Friar coldly brushed away Dahlia's hand. "Darya, stay away from me!" But as Darya still wanted to check on her condition, Andreisha beside her intervened. "Calm down, Darya. If I'm not mistaken, Duke Friar has entered a magical outburst." Upon hearing these words, Darya felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Why would it be Duke Friar? Why at this moment? There were no warning signs before. In her extreme panic, Darya suddenly remembered. The plot had already positioned its pieces. She had been deliberately ignoring it all along. A magical outburst incident occurred during a ball. So for the following 4 years, Friar never appeared again. Instead, her son Winley Brubert became the new Duke, appearing before everyone. At this moment, Eclipse rushed over urgently, quickly having servants request His Majesty's immediate presence to prevent the situation from escalating. But Darya understood that the only way to stop a magical outburst was to kill the transcendent. Such a gentle friar, yet now she must die from a magical outburst. Powerless Darya could only clench her heart in anguish. Duke Friar, suffering from the magical outburst, could no longer control her magic. The ground and pillars where she stood had already begun showing cracks. The surrounding guests, seeing the dire situation, fled in all directions, only to be knocked to the ground after running several meters. Touching with their hands, they discovered a transparent wall sealing off this area. Brubert, as a transcendent, possessed the ability to construct protective barriers. This loss of control had to be stopped immediately. "When will His Majesty arrive?" 1 minute is needed. Hearing Eclipse's response, Andreisha turned to look at Darya. Were you frightened, Darya? However, I must now check on Duke Friar's condition, so Darya, quickly find an exit and leave this place. What about you, Andreisha? I have long been prepared for this. At this moment, Eclipse was also shouting, Darya, come here quickly, it's too dangerous over there. Seeing the anxious Eclipse, Darya merely bit her lip and stood resolutely in place. She recalled the words written in her notebook. You possess the world's only healing ability. Wherever you go, there is salvation. You are destined to journey through stars and moonlight, bringing forth countless rays of hope. Now she finally understood what the diary meant. Even if she herself dwelled in the abyss, she must still redeem others and heal others. At this moment, a weak voice came from behind Darya. Darya, could you speak with me for a little while? This was Friar, who had been by her side since the moment of her arrival in this world. Even though she was now caught in a magical outburst, even though it might endanger her own life. Just then, the Emperor also arrived. Why would Brubert have a magical outburst? She has always been extremely stable. Suddenly, an immensely powerful burst of light erupted from where Brubert stood. Seeing Andreisha and Darya still standing nearby, Eclipse unhesitatingly grasped Dahlia's hand. Observing Eclipse's deep concern for her, Darya nevertheless pushed away her brother's hand. Eclipse couldn't understand why Darya would act this way, yet she smiled and spoke a few words to Eclipse, then calmly merged with the light. Though she was such a delicate and lovely sister, at this moment she resolutely returned to the radiance. Seeing Eclipse still yearning for Darya, the Emperor seized Eclipse's arm and pulled him back. Have you lost your mind? Before your magical awakening, you cannot withstand such powerful attacks. But Eclipse continued staring directly at that brilliant light, calling out Darya's name repeatedly. Even the Emperor could not restrain Eclipse's heart that desperately wanted to save his sister. The light gradually faded, leaving Eclipse standing helplessly in place like a lost child. He couldn't understand why his sister would say it's all right, brother, in such a way. But at this moment, he could do nothing except watch his sister disappear before his eyes. The walls here had vanished without leaving any trace. If we want to rescue them, we must break through the protective barrier. But this is extremely difficult. There's little hope. The Emperor's words pushed Eclipse further into despair, plunging him into endless darkness. This was a realm of pure white nothingness, also the burial ground Friar had prepared for herself. It turned out that after Darya was enveloped by the light, she appeared in this pure white space. Here, there was only endless desolation and solitude. Fortunately, she spotted Andreisha ahead of her. Upon hearing footsteps behind her, Andreisha quickly turned around and took Darya's hand. When did you arrive here? Are you injured? I should have stayed with you, protecting you by your side. Seeing Andreisha's guilty expression, Darya smiled and said, I'm perfectly fine, and I'm so glad you're safe too. Then, looking up at this pure white realm, this place doesn't seem particularly dangerous either. That's not the case at all, Darya. The protective walls here are slowly shrinking. Oh, so this space will soon disappear and we'll be crushed to pulp, won't we? Seeing Darya's panic, Andreisha comforted her. Let's search around and see if there's any way to survive. Time passed minute by minute, yet the two still hadn't conceived a solution. At this point, Darya suggested, how about we go directly to find Duke Friar? Andreisha nodded, agreeing with Darya's proposal. As they searched for Friar in the pure white realm, they spotted a solitary figure. It was Duke Friar with her mask removed. The fire had left hideous scars across her face, yet this didn't frighten Darya. Instead, she wanted to approach Friar. Andreisha beside her intervened. Wait, Darya, getting too close might... You must be Miss Andreisha Parola? I never expected our first meeting would be under such circumstances. How regrettable. I had hoped to meet Dahlia's friend under normal circumstances. So, this is also a protective wall built to restrain me. Though people outside cannot enter, those inside can leave at any time. Your Grace, what about you? My mind is collapsing and my soul has entered a rampage. This is my burial ground and my final resting place. So Miss Andreisha, could you temporarily leave while I still retain some sanity? I wish to spend my final moments with Darya. Andreisha couldn't bear to refuse Friar's final request in life, so she solemnly said to Darya, I'll go outside to report to His Majesty first. I'll see you again soon, Darya. Darya, let's sit down and chat together. She was such a gentle person, unwilling to harm anyone even in death. She even apologized to Darya for ruining the ball. Though you specifically invited me, I've made such a mess of things. I'm truly sorry, Darya. Seeing Friar still smiling so gently, Darya's eyes couldn't help but redden. But being able to speak so intimately with Darya at the end, before Friar could finish speaking, her body had already begun weakening uncontrollably. I'm sorry, Darya. It seems my time is already insufficient. Trembling, Friar could only clutch her chest to suppress the pain while expressing her final attachments to Darya. Do you remember? I was once a transcendent. So I constantly worried about losing control of my power and consuming everything, living perpetually in anxiety and suffering. Especially after my husband left me and my son grew increasingly distant. My soul was gradually pulled into darkness, unable to glimpse any light. But then I met Darya. At that time, you had just been born and were crying loudly in my arms. And now, in the blink of an eye, you've become such a gentle, strong, and brave young woman. Being with Darya like this brought me such happiness and joy that I gradually forgot the endless loneliness of being a transcendent. I don't know when it started, but I felt I was no longer alone. So I believe Eclipse will gradually change too, becoming true siblings with Darya. But I won't be able to witness such a beautiful day. I truly wanted to spend many more wonderful times with Darya. What a pity. Even though it was such a sad occasion, the Duke still smiled gently. The most fortunate thing in her life was meeting Darya, and the second most fortunate was sharing the fragrance of flowers with Darya and spending many joyful days together. If love has divine will, I would want to meet Darya again in the next life. Though the Duke firmly believed Darya would heal Eclipse, Darya herself lacked confidence. Since she couldn't save the mentally collapsed friar, she certainly couldn't save the soul-fallen Eclipse or Andreisha, who would walk an unfortunate path in the future. If only life could remain as beautiful as our first meeting. They would drink afternoon tea together, sharing life's interesting stories rather than facing a desolate future without wind, moon, or you. At this thought, Dahlia's tears could no longer be contained, falling drop by drop onto her hands. So even if she couldn't stop Friar's mental collapse, she still had something she must do. Previously, Friar had always cared for her when she was weak, so when Friar was in pain, she too must extend a helping hand to Friar. Thank you, Duke Friar, for being like a mother to me. I truly, truly love you so much. Saying this, Darya began sobbing uncontrollably. Not even the countless stars could compare to the burning love in Darya's heart. A brilliant light burst forth between their hearts, quickly enveloping the two as they embraced tightly. A speck of dust settled, and Darya and Friar reappeared before everyone. What should have been a dire crisis had now ended with both emerging completely unharmed. However, Friar had fallen unconscious, collapsing limply against Darya. The arriving emperor quickly placed Friar on the ground to assess her condition. She has merely fainted. It should be mental exhaustion after escaping the magical outburst. Hearing this result, Andreisha couldn't help but be amazed. Such a terrifying magical outburst was simply quelled, just like that? The emperor spoke seriously. This matter must be kept absolutely secret. Darya, are you injured in any way? Eclipse rushed over in panic, grasping Darya's arm and inquiring frantically. Seeing Darya shake her head, he asked awkwardly yet angrily, "Why did you—" Darya reached out her hand, gently caressing the insecure Eclipse. "I'm sorry, did I make you worry?" The proud Eclipse merely silently clutched his precious treasure, until Darya noticed it was becoming painful, and only then did Eclipse release his grip. "Eclipse, Miss Darya, I shall take Duke Friar away now. She needs rest and recuperation going forward. Is her grace truly all right now? From all appearances, she should be fine." All of this is thanks to Darya. Because of Darya's inner persistence and love, a miracle occurred. Finally able to relax, Darya at this moment acted like a true child, running into Eclipse's embrace and crying. This was different from the hopeless and painful weeping when she held Friar. This was joyful crying, blissful crying. Thank goodness, truly thank goodness. Eclipse embraced Darya, quietly allowing Darya's tears to soak his clothing. The clouds parted to reveal the sun, and sunlight finally pierced through the clouds, illuminating the sky. The possessiveness of transcendence is terrifying. If they learned that Darya possessed the ability to purify souls and heal magical outbursts, it would surely bring unimaginable consequences for Darya. So to prevent such situations from arising, the Emperor planned to inform Eclipse of the specific circumstances on one hand, while arranging for Andreisha to become Darya's personal bodyguard on the other. Andreisha was also very willing to protect Darya. Though they hadn't spent much time together, it was enough for Andreisha to grow fond of this strong and brave girl. If only we could become even closer. Sunlight gently filtered into the peaceful bedroom, and Friar finally awakened from her unconscious state. "You're awake? Are you feeling better physically?" After receiving an affirmative response, the Emperor spoke seriously. "I hope you can keep Darya's abilities secret." Friar also believed this was the best decision. Darya was her precious friend, and she absolutely could not let her be exposed to the transcendence. Moreover, as the first person to escape from a magical outburst, she would certainly be extensively covered by the newspapers. Under such circumstances, she also had to return to her territory to reduce her presence. Hearing Friar's words, the Emperor was also gratified that Friar could go to such lengths. However, Friar still wanted to see Darya once more before returning to her territory. The Emperor, who left the bedroom, instructed Acellus to arrange another attendant for Friar. Yet Acellus showed no reaction whatsoever. Even the Emperor was surprised, so there are days when Acellus becomes absent-minded? In reality, Acellus had been wondering these past days. Exactly what had happened at the ball to allow Friar to successfully escape the outburst. It seemed he would need to conduct more surveillance on Darya, who had been by Friar's side. Meanwhile, as expected, the incident of a transcendent surviving a magical outburst was being continuously discussed among the populace. Today, Darya was summoned by the Emperor to inquire about the specific events that occurred in the pure white realm. After speaking with the Duke for a while, she embraced Duke Friar. At that instant, brilliant light suddenly erupted, and the Duke's magical outburst ceased. Indeed, that's correct. Though it sounds incredible, this is certainly something you could accomplish, Darya. However, I'm still puzzled as to why Duke Friar suddenly fell into an outburst. Generally speaking, a transcendent soul degrades gradually. That is indeed a good question, and it puzzles me as well. However, Miss Darya need not worry too much, as we are working together with the Brubert family to investigate this matter. But we truly owe our gratitude to Miss Darya for keeping Fred alive. Therefore, should Darya encounter any difficulties in the future, she may come directly to the palace to find me. This is a palace access pass for you. With it, you can enter the palace at any time. Thank you so very much. Finally, after bidding farewell to the Emperor, Darya knocked on Fred's door and saw Fred, who had been constantly on her mind and in her thoughts. I was truly so worried about you, she spoke while rushing into Friar's arms, hugging her tightly. Friar also embraced Darya, stroking Dahlia's hair. I'm so sorry, Darya, for making you worry. After finally calming their emotions, the two sat together on the sofa to chat. Darya, I've decided to return to my territory. After what happened, I'm no longer suitable for managing territorial affairs, so I'll pass the ducal position to my son. When we meet next time, please call me Viola Darya. Does this name sound strange? That's why I never told you before. Finally, Darya, you are the most important friend in my life. So once this matter settles down, I'll come to the capital to find you. As the carriage's shadow gradually disappeared into the sunset, Darya returned to being alone once again. However, Andreisha filled the void left by Friar's absence, becoming Darya's closest confidant. Love at first sight brings forth countless joys, and this indescribable bond between close friends was truly sweet. Though Andreisha was Darya's dedicated maid, the relationship between them was extraordinarily close. Not only did Andreisha adore the sun-like warmth of Darya, but Darya also wanted to redeem Andreisha and bring her the light of hope. Why is Andreisha so beautiful? In my eyes, Darya is more beautiful. She truly couldn't resist such a gentle person, making Darya act coquettishly toward Andreisha endlessly. I absolutely adore Andreisha. Beyond their adorable little interactions, they would also discuss the latest handsome men and beautiful women keeping up with fashion trends. Have you heard? Miss Peel is completely infatuated with the Crown Prince. Goodness, I never realized the Crown Prince had such charm. But he's not my type. Have you seen the Crown Prince? Well, I've heard a little about him. In truth, Darya had seen this character while playing the game. His appearance was rather ordinary. Andreisha also whispered to Darya, I see, he's not my preferred type either. After speaking, the two shared a knowing understanding and laughed happily together. But Darya, you don't find these topics distasteful? Why would you say that? Because when I've discussed similar topics with others before, they became very angry and would question whether I had spoken about such things with other people too. Therefore, I feel I cannot inspire trust in others. Touching the gradually cooling tea in her hands, Darya contemplated Andreisha's past. Born to be trained as a killing machine. And even after entering high society, she had to conceal her identity while completing missions. Blood and darkness had shaped Andreisha into a frost rose, making her difficult to approach. Yet she still hoped for, yearned for being loved, accepted, and cherished. Andreisha was just such a gentle yet powerful person. Darya placed her hand over Andreisha's. I will always believe in Andreisha with unwavering faith. That delicate hand not only touched Andreisha's hand, but also touched Andreisha's tender heart. Even her eyes curved with happiness. Thank you. The horses moved slowly, the sunlight was warm, and you looked beautiful. Andreisha's smile was as lovely as a spring day, filled with indescribable tenderness. At this moment, Darya finally understood why so many men would stop at nothing to possess Andreisha. She too wanted to stay with Andreisha for a long, long time. However, since Asellus and Andreisha both served as the Emperor's attendants, though conflicts often arose between them, Asellus gradually developed feelings for Andreisha and became an obsessive madman. With this concern, Darya inquired uneasily, That man who came with his majesty last time, you mean Asellus? Are you on good terms with him? Not particularly, we simply know each other. Darya breathed a sigh of relief, thinking silently, That's wonderful. I hope they never have any involvement with each other in the future. At this moment, a voice came from behind. Seeing how well Darya and Andreisha got along, Eclipse felt an indescribable loneliness in his heart, and could only say coldly, Miss Parola, it's quite late now. Please return. But upon seeing Darya's reluctance to part with Andreisha, tightly embracing Andreisha, his heart filled with an inexplicable sense of loss and melancholy. Even through the screen, Pepe could smell the strong scent of jealousy. Moreover, to learn what Darya did throughout each day, he arranged for personal attendants to follow Darya closely, recording everything Darya did in detail and reporting it to him. After Andreisha left, Eclipse spoke sourly again. "You should be more cautious. Andreisha reports everything to His Majesty." But from Darya's perspective, Eclipse seemed as cautious and guarded as if facing an enemy, visiting so many times each day yet refusing to speak a single word to Andreisha. With this thought, Darya could only say carefully, "Since Duke Friar left, I haven't had any friends." Hearing this, Eclipse's brow furrowed even more deeply. "You can have whatever friends you want, because you are a Pestalozzi." Seeing Darya's lack of response, Eclipse added sourly, "You've only known each other for 3 weeks, yet you're already so close?" After speaking, he left without looking back. Darya found it very strange what Eclipse's purpose was in coming here. But it must be said that since the Friar incident, Eclipse had become much more gentle. Warmth gradually flowed from his features, especially during those peaceful days. In those moments of sunset and sunrise, his tenderness toward Darya was hidden everywhere. The Eclipse who had been so cold before, now thoughtfully opened doors for Darya, silently cleared paths for Darya, and patiently helped Darya into carriages. Even Darya was puzzled. Was Eclipse startled on the day of the magical outburst, causing him to act this way? A few days later, Andreisha came to discuss the palace ball to be held a month hence. This time, it's the Crown Prince's birthday ball. Is that so? It sounds like it will be spectacular. However, before that, let's try hosting a tea party first. With more acquaintances, Darya will feel more relaxed at the ball. Would anyone come if I sent invitations? Of course they would. Eating sweets, Darya was also very happy about the prospect of meeting more people. Moreover, with so many desserts available, it would be such a waste not to share them with others. It would be unfair to their pastry chef. However, I should inform my brother in advance. Of course, His Grace will also help send you an invitation. Will he? Certainly. He'll definitely be delighted. Speaking of this, Andreisha glanced at the maid behind her with her peripheral vision, then stood up and whispered in Darya's ear, "His Grace's affection for you truly exceeds your imagination. Moreover, I believe His Grace is quite jealous of my relationship with Darya." It must be said that Andreisha hit the nail on the head. Jealous? How could that be? Returning to her room, Darya kept pondering Andreisha's words, recalling once again that what truly moves hearts is never sweet talk, but perfectly timed tenderness and genuine sincerity. Darya continuously reflected on what Andreisha had said. Eclipse actually gets jealous. The thought that her cold brother could have such petty emotions made Darya's heart bloom like a flower. How adorable indeed. She immediately knocked on Eclipse's door. Eclipse opened the door to find Darya outside, though his expression remained cold as always. His body was honest, stepping aside to let Darya enter. Upon entering, Darya saw mountains of documents scattered messily across the desk. Eclipse returned to his desk, processing documents at inhuman speed, with only the sound of rustling paper filling the air. Darya couldn't help but sigh. Indeed, being a duke isn't something anyone can do casually. Thinking of herself living carefree and indulgent outside, while Eclipse could only work diligently and complainingly, Darya found herself unable to voice her desire to host a tea party. "Do you have business here?" No, I simply missed my brother. If it concerns the tea party, I've already handled it. You can ask Sebastian for details." At this moment, Eclipse, who was still methodically processing documents, appeared utterly charming in Darya's eyes. "How did you know about it? The maid already informed me." Darya's heart warmed at Eclipse's unexpected thoughtfulness. "You must be busy, right? I'm sorry." "You needn't worry about it. It's no big deal." With her heart in turmoil, Darya could no longer resist wanting to get closer to her aloof brother. "Thank you, brother." Eclipse, who hadn't been this close to Darya in quite some time, was now as calm and gentle as a languid cat. The sky gradually darkened. "You should go to bed now. It's getting late." "All right, but before sleeping, I'd like to study beside you for a while." "As you wish." She then brought over a chair and placed it next to Eclipse, only to discover the desk was somewhat too high. "You're too short. This desk doesn't suit you. At this age, you should have been about the same height as me, shouldn't you?" "Even then, I was taller than you." "What about when you were even younger?" Seeing Eclipse's lips curve upward slightly, Darya's eyes gradually crinkled with laughter. In those peaceful days, whenever Darya looked up, all she saw was gentleness and warm sunlight. Not sweet words, not sugar-coated promises, not expensive gifts, but endless love within those clumsy phrases. The moon gradually rose and stars twinkled in the sky. A soft murmur reached his ears, and Eclipse, who had been writing tirelessly, finally noticed that Darya beside him had unknowingly fallen asleep. Though she was such a serene sleeping beauty, there was some mysterious liquid at the corner of her mouth, making her sleep like a fool. But watching Darya sleep so obediently beside him filled his heart with an indescribable feeling, both sour and swollen. Not long ago, he had been alone, trapped in darkness, willingly imprisoned within it, savoring endless solitude. But somehow, a ray of light gradually illuminated this sunless black box. His heart began to stir. His footsteps began following that person's figure, and his eyes couldn't look away from that dazzling radiance. By the time he realized it, he had already fallen too deep to escape. "Excuse me, Your Grace. Have you seen Miss Darya?" "Oh my miss!" Seeing Darya sleeping so peacefully beside Eclipse, the maid couldn't help but panic. "I apologize, I was the one who called her here. I'll escort Darya back to her room." With that, Eclipse lifted the still sleeping Darya, placing her gently on her bed and covering her with blankets. After settling Darya, Eclipse lingered by her bedside, unconsciously recalling the Emperor's words, "Eclipse, transcendents are solitary beings." But somehow at this moment, he no longer felt lonely. What makes youth most nostalgic isn't just those unspoken confessions, but also those beautiful poetry-like friendships. Over the following days, Darya gradually received replies to the tea party invitations. Looking at so many letters, Darya couldn't help but exclaim, "Worthy of the Pestilaw's name indeed." However, reading through the correspondence, Darya was puzzled. Why are they all coming with their mothers? They probably all want to greet you personally, especially this lady. She had a close relationship with your mother and once hoped her daughter could become your maid. Really? I had no idea. That's why I'm so grateful to be your maid, because many people wanted to become your personal attendant. I'm also delighted that Andreisha became my exclusive maid. Hearing this, Andreisha's face lit up with joy as she embraced Darya. I'm truly happy to have met Darya. Watching such an affectionate Andreisha, Darya stroked the small head in her arms, just like a little puppy. With clear skies and gentle breezes, it was a perfect day for a tea party. Not only were there flowers adorning the garden's spring colors, but also breathtakingly beautiful women whose smiles could captivate nations, leaving every guest at the tea party praising endlessly. Among them was Lady Henry, whom Andreisha had mentioned, who also attended the gathering. Sitting together with so many people for dining and conversation for the first time went much more smoothly than Darya had imagined. Everywhere rang with young ladies' cheerful laughter, until Lady Henry's single remark changed this harmonious scene. "What a pity it is. If my daughter, with her noble status and refined upbringing, had become your maid instead." Hearing those words filled with regret and endless implications, the faces of everyone present subtly changed. Andreisha particularly sensed Lady Henry's barely concealed malice toward her. So to ensure the tea party proceeded smoothly, Andreisha stood to bid farewell to Darya. "I just remembered I have some urgent matters to attend to." But Darya firmly grasped Andreisha's hand, reluctant to let her leave, especially in such an undignified manner. Andreisha merely smiled, "I'll be fine." However, after Andreisha's departure, discussions about her only increased, becoming even more brazenly malicious speculation. "I heard that maid will do anything to please the Emperor. And furthermore, she might go around spreading gossip about Miss Darya. Andreisha isn't that kind of person. She's an exclusive maid personally bestowed upon me by His Imperial Majesty." "Oh my, was she personally granted by His Imperial Majesty?" "Yes, before this I had no maid at all. My mother passed away without preparing one for me. So His Imperial Majesty specially selected one for me." The guests, coming to their senses, also felt their earlier speculation had been rather unreliable. "So that's how it was? We had no idea the Pestilaw's family had such connections with the Emperor," though the atmosphere gradually became more lively. Darya ended the tea party early. "I've been very happy today, but let's conclude the tea party here." After the awkward conclusion of the tea party, some people, realizing their comments had been thoughtless, apologized to Darya, and Darya accepted their apologies. But after they left, she sat alone on the bench, looking forlorn, until a voice beside her spoke. "Thank you for defending me." Darya simply smiled sweetly, her gaze filled with gentleness wherever it fell. Andreisha, leaving the ducal mansion, clutched her purse tightly, took a long deep breath, then strode away with determination. That former ice rose because of Darya began slowly melting its frozen exterior, revealing its tender heart within. Among millions of people, meeting the one you're meant to meet, across millions of years in time's vast wilderness, neither a step too early nor too late, encountering Darya made the years gentle. So no matter how difficult the future might be, she would protect Darya well. One embrace could be exchanged for a noble title. Wouldn't Pee-Pee make you go bankrupt then? In fact, due to Andreisha receiving cold treatment at the tea party, Darya conceived the idea of granting Andreisha a status befitting her worth. She's an exceptional person. She deserves treatment that matches her qualities. This was the first time Darya spoke to the Emperor with such persistence and seriousness. "I understand Miss Darya's thoughts, but what would I gain from this?" Not expecting the Emperor to respond this way, Darya said uneasily, "Anything except engagement would be acceptable." Seeing such an adorable Darya, the Emperor said with a smile, "I truly wish I could have a daughter too. I shall grant the Perola family the title of Count. Really? However, it requires one embrace from Darya in exchange. Would that be acceptable? Not expecting the condition to be so simple, Darya immediately stepped forward and embraced the emperor tightly. In this embrace, once again experiencing that soul-purifying comfort, he couldn't help but close his eyes to slowly savor this inner tranquility. Since his interactions with Darya began, not only had his insomnia improved, but his headaches had also lessened, and even his destructive urges were being gradually eliminated. Having experienced this, he never wanted to return to that gray, clamorous world. He truly hoped Darya would come see him often. After Darya left, the emperor sought out Andreisha, telling her that Darya had personally approached him hoping to grant Andreisha the title of count. A gentle smile appeared on Andreisha's perpetually cold face. She hadn't expected Darya to consider her to such an extent, giving selflessly without expectation of return, solely to improve her circumstances. By the way, the ball is approaching. This time I plan to introduce Darya to several of my sons, mainly to Leonard and Cedric. But Cedric has escaped from the palace again, even though he was just captured less than a month ago. So, you want Miss Darya to become His Royal Highness the Crown Prince's dance partner? No, that would displease Eclipse. Therefore, Leonard's partner will be you, Andreisha. So, I'm counting on you at the ball. Just as Andreisha was leaving the palace, thinking about Darya along the way, she accidentally bumped into Acellas. Hearing Andreisha's apology, Acellas merely smiled and inquired, "Do you have something troubling you, miss?" "It's nothing. Could it be about the upcoming royal ball?" Seeing that Andreisha had no interest in conversation, Acellas nodded and departed. It turned out Acellas was also eagerly anticipating seeing Darya at the ball. After all, the previous magical outburst incident had troubled him for quite some time, so this time he absolutely had to find key evidence for what calmed the magic. After some time, the long-awaited ball finally arrived. This time, Darya also prepared exquisite attire. The long-awaited ball had finally come, featuring the deep-sea beauty Darya, the elegant violet Andreisha, and the ascetic Black Knight Eclipse. Truly earthly perfection. For the ball, Eclipse selected a priceless bracelet to give to Darya. As Dahlia's exclusive maid, Andreisha also came to the Pestrotz ducal mansion. The understated yet elegant dark purple gown looked absolutely stunning on Andreisha. Love at first sight. Can we really watch this without paying? The excited Darya kept exclaiming, "So beautiful, Andreisha." Andreisha looked at adorable Darya with a gentle smile. "You're the one who's truly beautiful. Also, I heard from the emperor." "Thank you. Hee. It was nothing." At this moment, a maid reminded Darya that her hairstyle wasn't finished yet. So Andreisha and Darya sat together in chairs to chat. "Your first dance should be with His Grace, so could you dance with me afterward?" Seeing Andreisha's expectant expression, Darya remembered that here, women could dance together too. "Of course." "Oh, and I have a gift for Darya. It might be a bit modest." Opening the blue gift box revealed a pair of starlight gradient white gloves. Though they appeared quite simple, the details were exquisitely crafted, showing Andreisha's thoughtfulness. Especially when Darya put them on, they were extremely comfortable, as if measured precisely with a ruler. Seeing Darya wearing the gift she had carefully selected, the delighted Andreisha took Darya's hand and said earnestly, "They'll protect Darya just like I do." Darya also smiled happily. "I'll wear them carefully." Since Andreisha was Leonard's dance partner, she went to the palace early. Darya sat in her chair waiting for Eclipse. Thinking of this, Darya felt somewhat melancholy. Ever since she had fallen asleep in Eclipse's room that time, she had barely seen her brother. But perhaps this time she could have a few more words with him. Just then, Eclipse came walking over with measured steps. Eclipse was completely different from Andreisha, like a dark knight emerging from an icy world, as if nothing in this realm could capture his interest, extremely ascetic and noble, untouched by worldly concerns. Seeing her brother finally arrive, Darya excitedly approached Eclipse, while he made no movement, simply staring blankly at Darya. Could it be because his sister is too adorable? Especially these big Kalan's eyes of mine. "No, I'm just surprised at how small you look." Already well acquainted with Eclipse's temperament, yet still harboring expectations. At this moment, the huffing Darya caught sight of Eclipse extending his hand in her peripheral vision. "Let's go." Such brief words, would saying one more sentence offend the air? But Darya obediently placed her hand in Eclipse's palm. Though she had been close to Eclipse many times, each occasion still felt somewhat awkward. However, Darya still had some questions she wanted to ask Eclipse, so she slowly brought up the tea party incident. After hearing the entire story, Eclipse said to the anxious Darya, "Well done!" Not expecting her brother to say this, Darya stared with puzzled wide eyes. "You handled such inappropriate and unreasonable remarks very well, didn't you? One morning wasn't bad either." He then gently stroked Darya's small head. "Well done!" The usually cold Eclipse was now incredibly tender, and Darya's eyes crinkled with laughter under his gentle caress. "The sunlight is lovely, and so are you." Arriving at the ball, Darya and Eclipse hadn't even entered, when they were stopped by an unfamiliar couple. "Oh my, isn't this the Count from the ennoblement ceremony?" Who would have thought a transcendent uprising would occur that day? The lady beside them also said with a grin, "Oh my, isn't this Miss Darya?" Just as the rumors say, she clings to her brother and won't let go. His grace is truly blessed. Though spoken with smiling faces, there was an undertone of mockery and schadenfreude, and even their language was discourteous. "Please mind your words, Viscount. Though this is our first meeting, every sentence you speak is impertinent. Are we the sort of people who should listen to such remarks?" The Viscount, who had intended to bully the solitary Duke, was shaken by Eclipse's heart-piercing words, and became flustered. "My apologies, Your Grace and Miss Darya. I was thoughtless and will be more careful." Eclipse coldly drew Darya aside, then spoke to his naive sister word by word. "Remember, you are a pestilaz, so you must never tolerate such unreasonable remarks." Darya simply lowered her head, then couldn't help bursting into giggles. "What are you laughing at? Seeing you so angry reminded me of myself at the tea party." Momentarily speechless, Eclipse's anger dissipated, especially seeing his silly sister still giggling foolishly. He could only helplessly lead this little fool into the venue. Upon entering, Darya's eyes were immediately captivated by the exquisite, delicious-looking desserts, silently thinking they must taste wonderful. The food-obsessed Darya instantly transformed into an adorable little rabbit, gazing at Eclipse with pitiful big eyes. "Brother, may I eat that?" "Eat if you want to." Taking a bite of the dessert that melted sweetly in her heart, it was absolutely delicious and made her so happy. So Darya also invited her brother to try some, but Eclipse coldly declined. Then Darya took several more bites. "It's really, really delicious." At this moment, the attentive Eclipse offered a handkerchief. "You got some on the corner of your mouth." The embarrassed Darya blushed as she took the handkerchief and quickly wiped. As the music began, Darya and Eclipse entered the dance floor for their first dance. As Eclipse's arm encircled her slender waist, Darya began to feel nervous. Seeing Darya's dance posture stiffer than a zombie's, Eclipse softly comforted, "It doesn't matter if you step on me. Just relax a little." Somewhat relaxed, Darya finally naturally integrated into the dance. "Is this also your first time dancing at a ball, brother?" "No, I knew it would be like that." "Why would you think that?" "Because it feels like you're skilled at everything." Watching his sister imitate his expression, even Eclipse found it somewhat overwhelming. But Darya burst into laughter again. "What are you laughing at?" "Haha, nothing really," because Darya hadn't expected teasing her brother would be so amusing. However, Darya, who focused on teasing her brother rather than concentrating on dancing, ended up missing the beat and stepping on Eclipse's foot. I'm sorry." "It's fine. After all, you've acquired the passive skill of stepping on feet while dancing." Hearing Eclipse's deadpan joke, Darya felt very happy. But the overexcited Darya once again stepped on Eclipse's foot. The guilty Darya could only ask cautiously, "Should I heal it?" Eclipse merely said helplessly, "Be more ladylike." At this moment, a servant whispered something in Eclipse's ear. Looking at this curly-haired figure, one could tell the clever one had arrived. The servant was informing Eclipse that the first Prince Leonard had come. "It's been a while, Your Royal Highness. Thank you for coming such a long way, Your Grace. Sorry for being somewhat late. My dance partner was quite talkative, so it took a bit longer than expected." Though spoken with an innocent, naive smile, the words could choke someone to death without compensation. It was really hard on Andreisha, who still had to maintain her gentle smile. Moreover, Leonard didn't stop there, constantly chattering about trivial matters, preventing Darya from even offering a word of congratulation. "By the way, Eclipse, congratulations on becoming a duke. As someone of the same age, I too wish I could become emperor soon." Everyone broke out in cold sweat. Was he hoping for the emperor to ascend to heaven quickly to make room for him? Unexpectedly, he continued talking. "I hope you both enjoy yourselves today." "Thank you, Your Highness." Seeing such a dignified and beautiful Darya, Leonard finally opened his eyes. "You must be the legendary young lady, I presume?" Hearing Leonard's words, Darya was quite puzzled. "Since we're both pitiful people as relatives of transcendence, let's get along well." Seeing Leonard extend his hand, Darya had no choice but to place hers on top. But after holding it for just a few seconds, Leonard quickly released it. "Well then, until we meet again." At this moment, Andreisha came to Darya's side and whispered, "Among all tonight's guests, you're the most beautiful." This made Darya's face flush slightly. "Make sure to have fun." A gentle smile graced her features. Spring is infinitely beautiful, only women with women is humanity's destination. Meanwhile, Leonard instructed servants to begin the performance immediately, preparing for the next dance. So Andreisha, as his dance partner, was called away by Leonard. Before leaving, she reminded Darya not to forget their promise to dance together next. Melodious songs filled the air as couples in the ballroom danced gracefully, creating a magnificent spectacle. Watching Leonard still dancing with his perpetual smile, Andreisha's face was becoming stiff from smiling. Being with Leonard was truly exhausting, as she spent the entire day worrying about whether he might say something wrong. By the way, I heard something interesting. Apparently, Eclipse's sister Miss Darya possesses a special ability. The moment Andreisha heard Leonard's words, her entire body went cold. This should be top secret. How could Leonard know about it? But she immediately composed herself and slowly asked, "What kind of ability?" "Well, I heard it's the power to heal Transcendent's magical outbursts." "Where did you hear about this?" "Acellas told me." Sensing something amiss, Andreisha planned to search for Acellas, so she apologetically requested Leonard, "Forgive me, Your Royal Highness, but may I excuse myself after this dance?" At this time, the Pestillos siblings, having dealt with everyone, could finally catch their breath and rest. "Though I came prepared, I really didn't expect it to be this tiring." Seeing such an adorable Darya, he secretly smiled to herself. "By the way, brother, may I dance with Andreisha later? Did Andreisha suggest it first?" Seeing her brother become somewhat cold again, Darya nodded cautiously. "I understand, but return immediately after dancing." Okay, having readily agreed, Darya actually wanted to come to the terrace first to rest and stretch, while also removing that priceless bracelet to shake out her tired wrists. Finally, a moment to rest. Under the tranquil night sky, gentle evening breezes caressed this weary little darling. Tonight's moonlight is truly beautiful. Unexpectedly, soft rustling sounds reached her ears. Could it be a squirrel? But then the movement suddenly grew louder, shaking the flower from Dahlia's hair to the ground. Even more critically, the precious bracelet also fell onto the green leaves outside. "I need to retrieve it quickly." Did it fall because of my appearance? The mysterious youth appearing in the tree under the starlit sky was none other than the Empire's second prince, Cedric. Though he smiled so gently, his words carried such sadness. It turned out that when Dahlia's bracelet fell onto the lawn, she looked up to see Cedric beneath the starry sky. "I can help you retrieve that bracelet, but as a condition, could you keep our meeting secret?" The bracelet then gently floated up from the tree and drifted back into Dahlia's hands. With her face slightly flushed, Darya lowered her head and said, "Thank you." This version of Cedric seemed utterly charming to Darya, as Cedric was both a transcendent and a mage. "Aren't you going inside? I don't like crowded places." "Well, I heard today's ball was held to celebrate the first prince's birthday. I imagine your birthday ball will be held soon as well." Hearing this, Cedric merely smiled slightly. "That won't happen, because I don't want anyone celebrating my birthday." Such gentle Cedric's voice was filled with a sadness Darya couldn't comprehend. "I see. What a shame." At this moment, Andreisha's voice suddenly came from behind Darya. Could it be that she came looking because Darya had been away too long? But listening carefully, there seemed to be other voices as well. "You're Miss Darya, aren't you? Could you speak with me privately for a moment?" Before Darya could even agree, he began floating upward, startling Darya into nearly crying out before quickly covering her mouth. Surrounded by magic, Darya was gently lifted onto the tree. But even clinging to the trunk, the still shaken and trembling Darya made Cedric smile helplessly and say, "Shh." Only then did the calm Darya notice what appeared to be a barrier-like protection around her, preventing her from falling. Cedric then whispered, "You can speak now, but keep it quiet." Darya nervously replied, Yes, but why specifically with me? Because I have a feeling something interesting might happen." The two sitting in the tree then spotted Andreisha and Acellas on the terrace. "Why would they be here?" The nearby Cedric found this extremely intriguing. "It would be great if we could uncover something interesting." "How did you know?" "Judging by your reaction, the one who saved Duke Friar Brubert must be that person." "I never had any proof, but who knew that bluffing you would make you give yourself away?" Hearing their conversation, Darya realized they were discussing her as the main subject. But how does Acellas know about this? Cedric was equally puzzled. Who exactly is this someone they're talking about? At this moment, Andreisha returned to the ballroom, leaving only Acellas behind. The Cedric beside her also suddenly vanished, leaving Darya only with a magical device. "Just break it, and you can return to the terrace." However, the somewhat warm device made Darya extremely curious, and she kept rubbing it. As expected, it immediately broke in half. But now the problem was that Acellas was still there, and she was about to return to the terrace. So could someone please save her? But despite calling on heaven and earth and the Supreme Lord, none appeared to help. Darya could only cover her face and drift back to the terrace, appearing before Acellas. "Miss Darya, you—" Acellas was only puzzled for a moment, before bowing respectfully to greet Darya. "My apologies, Miss Darya. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm His Imperial Majesty's attendant, Acellas. So you remember my name? Your beautiful gray hair is quite striking and memorable." At this moment, Acellas was thinking, Darya must have overheard his entire conversation with Andreisha just now. But more than that, there was something he urgently needed to confirm. "Miss Darya, would you mind shaking hands with me?" "Shake hands." Looking at the smiling Acellas, Darya reluctantly agreed. However, they only held hands briefly before separating. After the handshake, Acellas stared seriously at his palm, as if encountering some difficult problem. This version of Acellas left Darya very puzzled. Is there some issue? Acellas then completely changed from his cheerful demeanor, saying flawlessly, "I thought Miss Darya was someone special, but now I see it was my misconception." Instantly feeling speechless, Darya was irritated by Acellas's words. At this moment, Andreisha's voice gradually drifted over. "Excuse me, does anyone know where Miss Darya is?" Hearing this, Acellus, who felt somewhat annoyed, switched to a smiling expression. "Really, we're still in the middle of a conversation. Miss Darya must still have some doubts about me, right?" This statement indeed coincided with Dahlia's thoughts. Seeing Dahlia's cautious appearance, Acellus smiled and said, "Miss seems to be the type who shows everything she's thinking on her face." Dahlia reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, retorting, "That's not true, I'm leaving!" Acellus also knew he had gone too far and hurriedly blocked Dahlia's path. "Would you like to chat a bit more?" The fierce Dahlia directly refused. "No, please step aside." Hearing Andreisha's voice getting closer, Acellus sighed softly. "Please forgive my rudeness." Before Dahlia could react, he lifted her up and flipped over to beneath the balcony, with only one hand supporting them. "We're going to fall!" Frightened, Dahlia had no choice but to hold tightly onto Acellus. At this time, Andreisha also arrived. I clearly heard voices just now. Then Andreisha discovered Dahlia's fallen hair ornament, and thinking that Dahlia might have encountered an accident, hurriedly went to find Duke Pestrotz. After Andreisha left, Acellus brought Dahlia safely to the ground, and said somewhat troubled, "Who would have thought the hair ornament would fall? It's truly unimaginable. If others discover this, they'll think I kidnapped the young lady, which would be a serious matter. Then why did you do such a thing?" Acellus, who finally opened his eyes, said seriously, "That's because I have a plan. However, I'm sorry, Miss Darya, it's too early to explain to you now. But someday, you'll understand." Looking at Acellus, who was always scheming behind the scenes without giving those involved any clues, Dahlia felt truly frustrated. Could he be secretly plotting something? And Acellus said desolately, "For some unknown reason, I can only survive by doing this. It's too late to change now." This scene was originally what Acellus said to Andreisha in the game. At this moment, Dahlia should have comforted Acellus, but to prevent being entangled by the villain, Dahlia could only smile awkwardly. "You're not going to comfort me? I see." Hearing this, Acellus also planned to leave. Anyway, let's go back before this becomes a big issue. Watching Acellus's departing figure, Dahlia silently thought, will Acellus still walk the path of becoming the crazy villain from the original plot? At this time, the person who was about to leave turned back and asked, "What?" It turned out she had unconsciously spoken her thoughts aloud. Dahlia could only say nervously, "Nothing, let's hurry. What exactly are you two doing here?" That voice that made one break out in cold sweat belonged to the great demon king Eclipse. But Eclipse looked in very poor condition at this moment, with sweat at his temples and breathing heavily, appearing quite panicked. Seeing her furious brother, Dahlia immediately sensed trouble. "What's going on here? Just now Before Acellus could finish speaking, Eclipse said coldly, "You be quiet. Dahlia, you explain. My bracelet, the one you gave me, brother, I lost it. I planned to retrieve it, but nearly fell off the balcony. Acellus saved me and placed me beneath the balcony." Hearing that his sister was safe, Eclipse, who had been alarmed for nothing, also lowered his guard, saying to Acellus, "Thank you for saving my sister. I will present you with a reward later. It was my duty. I shall take my leave now." After Acellus left, Eclipse slowly crouched down in front of Dahlia. Under the quiet starry sky, moonlight gently fell on her lavender hair. It had been so long since they had been together so peacefully like this. Dahlia, who belatedly realized this, also knew that Eclipse must have expended much effort searching for her. "I'm sorry, brother, for making you worry." Eclipse only said lightly, "No need to apologize. Next time, don't put yourself in danger for such trivial things. Also, the ball is over. Let's leave." But at this moment, Dahlia couldn't stand up. Her legs had completely lost their strength. Hearing this, Eclipse immediately carried Dahlia in a princess carry. Unlike Acellus and Cedric, only her brother Eclipse would treat her with such intimate tenderness. Also unlike the last time Eclipse carried her on his shoulders. This time their relationship was somewhat more intimate. Leaning against Eclipse's shoulder, Dahlia held tightly onto Eclipse's neck. Eclipse remained silent, but held Dahlia a bit tighter. At this moment, Dahlia obediently said to Eclipse, "I'm truly sorry, brother." Eclipse only said quietly, "It's good that you understand." At this moment, even the stars in the sky couldn't compare to the tenderness in his eyes. On the other side, after the ball ended, the first prince was also somewhat dejected. Today was clearly his birthday, but the latter half became chaotic. Not only did Miss Dahlia disappear, but even her dance partner vanished while searching for Dahlia. "Well, there will be other opportunities next time." The first prince could only console himself this way. However, after he boarded his carriage, Andreisha came before him. What caught him most off guard was that Andreisha placed her hand on Leonard's leg. Such an innocent first prince instantly blushed explosively. "I have a request, and I hope you can agree to it. Regarding what you said about Miss Dahlia during our dance, could you please not speak of it to others? Because I am Miss Dahlia's personal maid, I don't want untrue rumors to spread." Seeing such a delicate beauty making such a pitiful and adorable request for something so trivial, Leonard immediately fell under her spell, eagerly responding, "Of course, if it's what Andreisha wishes." "Thank you." If it's convenient, could we have tea together next time? Even heroes have trouble with beautiful women, and even someone as scheming as the first prince couldn't match the high-level Andreisha. But toward Acellus, Andreisha wasn't a gentle beauty. She was a fierce beauty killer. She directly stepped forward and grabbed Acellus by the collar. "What exactly are you plotting? Always acting so secretively." "What's wrong with that? After all, with your current status as a count's daughter, living in the sunlight, didn't you used to be the same way? Isn't that right, Miss Andreisha?" "No, wait. Killer Pear Blossom would be more appropriate." Hearing this, Andreisha forcefully pushed away Acellus's hand. "I'm leaving this place. Perhaps we'll meet again someday." Knowing the secret, yet still wanting to leave, how could Andreisha let Acellus go? But with a snap of fingers, a huge explosion sounded behind Andreisha, followed by the appearance of massive white wings like an angel's. Even as Andreisha loudly tried to stop Acellus from leaving, he only turned back with a slight smile and mounted the giant demon bird. Flying through the night sky, Acellus couldn't help but recall his moments with Darya. When Darya had held onto his neck, his spirit instantly became relaxed, and even his chaotic mind became much clearer. So without doubt, it was Darya who had calmed the magical power rampage incident. Therefore, he must get Darya under his control. Just as he had used divine power to stimulate Fred, he would stimulate other transcendents to cause rampages, leading the Alexander Empire to destruction. However, as he used divine power, his heart suddenly tightened with pain. "I really want to see the moment when this empire falls." Who could have imagined such tremendous changes would occur within 3 years? In the blink of an eye, Darya had also become a 16-year-old girl, growing 10 centimeters taller and becoming quite charming and cute. Eclipse had shed all his murderous aura, becoming a gentle and reserved handsome man, and Acellus had become the pope of the neighboring sacred empire. Although in the original story Acellus also became pope, the timing had been moved up, and Acellus hadn't become infatuated with Andreisha either. Is it indeed because of her arrival that the plot has changed? However, her relationship with her brother had become somewhat closer. She could freely braid Eclipse's soft long hair into braids. Now her brother was 19 years old. His beauty was such that even his sister might accidentally become entranced. He was like a noble and elegant violet, but for some reason Eclipse still hadn't awakened his magical power. However, most importantly, Eclipse's birthday was approaching. So Darya said with much deliberation, what gift would be most appropriate? For this, she sought Andreisha's help with ideas. Andreisha smiled and said, "Whatever gift Darya gives, His Grace the Duke will be very happy." Although she said this, Darya still wanted to see Eclipse's surprised reaction to receiving an extraordinary gift from her. Today the weather was clear and pleasant, perfect for shopping. Darya was full of confidence and brought all her pocket money, even instructing the servants to pick her up after 3 hours. One of her birthday gift options was a fountain pen. Thinking of Eclipse holding the pen she gave him and writing diligently made her feel very happy. However, when she arrived at the stationery shop and inquired about the latest model fountain pen, she heard an unexpected voice. "For Eclipse?" She looked up and saw another breathtaking beauty. However, this hair black as night made Darya feel increasingly unusual. It wasn't until the man smiled, overlapping with the emperor in her memory, that she realized the man before her was Duncan Alexander II. But Duncan, who was traveling incognito and had even changed his hair color, certainly didn't want to be exposed. So, he stopped Darya's unfinished "Your Majesty." Then he had the shopkeeper wrap a fountain pen for him. This is the birthday gift he plans to give Eclipse. Darya, who had also wanted to give this gift, could only smile awkwardly. But as expected, being able to encounter the emperor was indeed because his troublesome second son had run away again. However, after seeing Darya, Duncan stopped looking for his son, instead staring directly at Darya, accusing her like an abandoned wife. "Why haven't you come to see me for a whole year? I haven't even seen the shadow of a single letter?" However, Duncan, who was good at consoling himself, didn't dwell on past grievances, but instead wanted to help Darya choose Eclipse's gift. Seeing Duncan's extended hand, Darya felt reassured as if she had found her backbone, and placed her hand in Duncan's. "Thank you," to help choose a suitable birthday gift for Eclipse. Darya and Duncan exchanged many ideas. Among them, the brooch she gave last year. Eclipse had been wearing it constantly, but she certainly couldn't give the same thing this year. At this time, troubled Darya thought of giving a gramophone, because Eclipse loved classical music. However, gramophones were expensive, and Duncan couldn't help but worry about Darya's little treasury. But seeing Darya's bulging little purse, he smiled and said, "This much can buy the best one." On the way to the shop, although Darya was happy that Duncan could accompany her in choosing a gift, she was also curious, is it really all right to spend such precious time on me? However, upon seeing the gramophone, Darya immediately cast her worries aside, and specially thanked Duncan. "Thank you for helping me when I was so troubled." After hearing this, Duncan only smiled lightly, because being with Darya makes me feel very pleasant and relaxed. After speaking, he didn't forget to remind Darya to visit the palace more often in the future. the gift for her brother must be the best. So Darya chose the best and most expensive gramophone without hesitation, and the money she brought was exactly enough to buy it. However, when signing the transaction, Darya noticed there was a place above the price that had been covered with ink. Seeing the puzzled Darya, the clerk carefully explained, due to a discount on the merchandise, the price was modified. However, Darya, who finally successfully made the purchase, finally felt relieved and returned to the Pestrotz Duke's mansion with Duncan. Did you have fun today? Very much. Seeing that Darya was satisfied with today's results, Duncan slowly expressed his thoughts. Since we had such a pleasant day, could Miss Darya fulfill one wish of mine? Hearing this, Darya, who understood immediately, smiled slightly and quickly rushed into Duncan's arms to hug him. Duncan, who realized what happened, also smiled happily, and all the fatigue from the journey was swept away at this moment. At this time, there was suddenly a coughing sound from behind. It turned out that in order to wait for Darya's return, Eclipse had already been waiting outside the door for a long time. Seeing Eclipse protecting Darya like the apple of his eye, Duncan couldn't help but advise, overprotecting your sister isn't a good thing. But how could Eclipse, who had knocked over the vinegar jar, listen to others' advice? No need for your concern. After speaking, he directly pulled Darya's hand and drew her into his arms. Thank you for bringing Darya back. Please return now. As night had fallen, Duncan knew it was time to leave, so he waved goodbye to Darya. Darya also happily bid farewell to Duncan. Seeing his sister finally return, Eclipse also felt at ease and extended his hand to Darya. Seeing Eclipse's extended hand, Darya just smiled and then grasped Eclipse's hand. What did you do with His Majesty? We went shopping together and also visited the stationery shop. And then, as the silhouettes holding hands gradually merged into the night, those endless words also gradually settled among the stars, sleeping with the night. As long as it was a gift from Darya, there was nothing Eclipse didn't like. But Darya never imagined that she was able to purchase the gramophone, because Duncan had secretly subsidized the shopkeeper. This year was another plain but warm birthday, with only Darya and Eclipse happily celebrating together, cutting cake. The joyful laughter continued until deep into the night. It wasn't until she lay in bed that Darya's excited mood finally calmed down. Such peaceful and warm days are exactly what Darya expected and hoped for. I really hope such days could continue forever. But this year was destined to be extraordinary. Duncan predicted that Eclipse's magical awakening would happen this year. But along with magical awakening came a sharp increase in destructive desires. However, this is a process that transcendence must go through, so Darya needn't worry. Although the Emperor said this, Darya still didn't feel very confident. But what the Emperor truly thought was, as long as Darya has this healing ability, Eclipse won't fall into trouble. But Darya's worries gradually became reality. Eclipse sensed that the magical power flow in his body was becoming increasingly active, so magical awakening is approaching. So Eclipse, preparing for the worst, planned to read some books related to magical awakening first. But due to the previous Duke's magical rampage, all books in the mansion had been burned. For this reason, Eclipse sought advice from the Emperor, but received only a reply saying, "Too busy with affairs, solve it yourself." Helpless Eclipse could only issue instructions to prepare for the approaching magical awakening. Although Eclipse was deeply troubled by the magical awakening, the servants in the mansion were also suffering. Since Eclipse loved the gramophone Darya gave him, he played it all day in his office, making the servants dream of music. Seeing these servants who were deeply affected, Darya was also helpless, because she had also approached Eclipse. But Eclipse said coldly, "If the surroundings aren't noisy, then my mind becomes very noisy." Darya could only tell the servants to stay away from Eclipse. However, later the gramophone was finally turned off, but Eclipse's condition was getting worse, becoming increasingly irritable. "Can't you see these messy documents? How many times do I have to tell you to understand? This is already the third time." But to prevent Eclipse's awakening from harming others, Darya had been staying with Eclipse in his office. Although mentally prepared, the furious Eclipse still somewhat frightened Darya beside him. After seeing Darya beside him, Eclipse could only suppress his anger and decided to go out for a walk. Seeing Eclipse in such pain and irritation, Darya also felt uncomfortable. At this time, she remembered what the Emperor had told her about the simplest way to heal Eclipse. Just a loving hug would do, because the power of love is incomparable, even to magical rampages. But just as Darya was about to touch Eclipse, she heard Eclipse's cold words, "Don't touch me." Then he slowly said, "I might hurt you." Hearing this, Darya's full courage turned to nothing, and she could only silently watch Eclipse leave. Because Eclipse had been increasingly irritable recently, his behavior and words much ruder than usual. Anxious Darya took advantage of Eclipse resting due to headaches, to visit the palace and ask Duncan for solutions. But Duncan was currently busy with matters concerning the neighboring Sacred Empire. However, upon seeing Darya, Duncan immediately knew it must be about Eclipse. So he put down his documents and carefully explained to Darya the precautions regarding magical awakening. First, magical awakening is divided into 3 stages: before awakening, during awakening, and after awakening. Before awakening, transcendents become more sensitive and irritable, generally lasting 3 weeks. After that comes the awakening phase, where destructive desires sharply increase, wanting to devour everything, wanting to destroy everything in sight, generally lasting 1 week. After that, it gradually calms and stabilizes. However, when Darya calculated the time, she realized 2.5 weeks had already passed, so there were only a few days left until magical awakening. Seeing Dahlia's panicked appearance, Duncan smiled and said, "Haven't you tried a loving hug?" Darya said with difficulty, "I tried once but couldn't get close to my brother." Hearing this, Duncan didn't plan to approach from the side to calm things, but proposed a frontal assault to Darya. "On this paper, I've carefully recorded what needs to be prepared for magical awakening. With this, Darya can better solve Eclipse's awakening problem." But when Darya looked at the words on the paper, she realized it was about treating the soon-to-awaken Eclipse like a caged beast. Prepare enough water and food, then seal the doors. Evacuate everyone, and return after a week when the magical power stabilizes. After that, Duncan also gave Darya magic scrolls. With these, you can prevent Eclipse from harming others. Finally, Duncan gave Darya documents to temporarily assume the duties of Duke Pestrotz. Because Eclipse is currently emotionally unstable, Darya needs to help handle some important matters of the estate. You can give the precautions to Sebastian at the estate, he will help you solve them. I believe Miss Darya is capable of handling this position. When Darya returned to the Duke's mansion, she gave the precautions to Sebastian, and suggested that the servants leave the Duke's mansion temporarily during this period, and return after things stabilized. At this time, Sebastian quietly said to Darya, "There's an identical scroll in the Duke's drawer as well." Besides this, Sebastian also felt very sad about Darya going to the Emperor to inquire about awakening matters. Because not only did the former Duchess hate the Duke, but the former Duke also hated His Grace the Duke, so he didn't teach the Duke anything about magical awakening, just letting His Grace fend for himself and drift with the current. But now with the young lady beside the Duke, His Grace is no longer alone. It's truly wonderful. At this moment, Darya understood even more that she must protect Eclipse, so she urged Sebastian to handle matters quickly. On the other side, Eclipse, suffering from splitting headaches, struggled to wake from his nightmare, and after resting in bed for a while, realized something was wrong. The usually noisy Duke's mansion was now eerily quiet. Before he could think further, the physical pain quickly spread throughout his body. It was agony that would tear him apart and explode, and countless malicious voices kept ringing in his ears. "You are a lone star from heaven. Everyone will abandon you, just like your parents. No one will love you, and no one will stay by your side. Have you forgotten what you did before?" Those voices made Eclipse recall his broken toys from childhood. Just like that shattered familial love, he had become alone again. But now with Darya, Eclipse was no longer alone, he had a weakness, so thinking that Darya would leave him, Eclipse couldn't suppress the violence in his heart, and violently smashed the vase against the wall. The vase shattered into pieces, and those malicious voices stopped. At this time, Eclipse, exhausted in body and spirit, realized he was thirsty. But when he reached for the bell and rang it again and again, all he got was an echo. So the bell was also thrown to the ground by Eclipse. At this time, there was finally some response from the door. Angry Eclipse immediately shouted, "You're so late coming in, are you deaf?" Before he could finish speaking, his voice stopped abruptly, because it was Darya who pushed the door and entered. At this moment, the angry Eclipse didn't dare to be angry anymore, but was somewhat at a loss. How could it be Darya? "Brother, you're awake. From today on, I'll be taking care of you temporarily." Eclipse, who immediately realized something was wrong, quickly ran outside the door, only to find the usually busy corridor was now empty. At this time, Darya also came to Eclipse's side. "Everyone in the mansion has gone on vacation. Now it's just you and me, brother." Who agreed to this? Brother gave these instructions. Recalling that he had indeed given the order, Eclipse couldn't help but feel discouraged, because he didn't want Darya to see his violent side. Seeing Eclipse wanting to leave, Darya wanted to go with her brother, but was coldly pushed away by Eclipse. "You're also an ordinary person. I'll handle the rest myself. You should leave too." But Eclipse knew he was just deceiving himself, as voices echoed in his mind. "You're lying. Guess how long before she leaves?" Those annoying voices in his head started again. Eclipse, suffering from headaches, could only say over and over, "Time to go to the office." Even though Darya kept shouting, "Brother, I won't abandon you," and leave, he couldn't hear it anymore. After Eclipse left, worried Darya took out the magic scroll from her sleeve. But the scroll had been damaged and lost its effectiveness. Darya hadn't expected Eclipse's magical power to be so strong, especially since this was still the early stage of magical awakening. Fortunately, Sebastian had told her there was another copy in the drawer. To prevent the other copy from being damaged as well, Darya now had to retrieve it and preserve it properly. Coming to Eclipse's office, Darya was about to push open the door when she was startled by a tremendous noise. The originally neat office had now been destroyed by magical power into complete chaos, with only Eclipse still standing unharmed in the clearing. Seeing that Eclipse was fine, Darya quickly searched for the scroll, but unexpectedly found that the remaining scroll had also been destroyed. So now there was nothing that could control Eclipse. Thinking that terrible situations might occur, Darya almost cried out, but to prevent stimulating Eclipse's sensitive nerves, she pressed her hand firmly over her mouth. At this time, Eclipse approached Darya step by step, but with each step Eclipse took, the ground beneath his feet also cracked. After Eclipse entered magical awakening, his entire consciousness fell into mad obsession. Just as he was walking toward Darya, shining golden hair appeared. It was Cedric, long time no see Darya. Then he carefully protected the frightened Darya behind him, smiling comfortingly. "Everything's fine now." Then he gently placed Darya on the sofa outside the battlefield using magic. Seeing Cedric suddenly appear here, Darya was also very panicked. "Why is your highness here? I came on father's orders." However, the next second, Darya felt very drowsy and swayed before collapsing on the sofa. Cedric, after Darya fell asleep, said softly, "Sleep for a while." Then he looked down at the madman. "You've been waiting long, Eclipse. I'll put you to sleep now." Unlike his calm and gentle tone with Darya, Cedric was now also aroused by fighting spirit, becoming excited all over. Eclipse, who had originally been approaching Darya by instinct, now slowly realized, someone wants to take Darya from him. But Darya was the only existence he could hold in his hands. He could have nothing, but he couldn't lose Darya. "I must kill him before he takes Darya away." At this moment, Eclipse was like a demon from hell, completely mentally collapsed, wanting only to slaughter. "Darya is mine. I will never give Darya to anyone else." Possessiveness and obsession with Darya had completely blinded Eclipse's eyes. To this, Cedric said indifferently, "Stop saying such childish things. Go to sleep obediently." After speaking, he immediately flew up to attack Eclipse, but was easily dodged by Eclipse, then blocked by a blade conjured from Eclipse's magical power. Feeling the difficulty, Cedric decided not to attack recklessly, but planned to prevent Eclipse from using magic. However, he still underestimated Eclipse's magical power. If he hadn't instantly deployed magic protection, he would have been immediately injured by Eclipse's magic. At this moment, Eclipse had deployed a magical domain, and with a forceful wave, the killing aura of the magic sword was already attacking Cedric. "This is bad." The somewhat disheveled Cedric now realized Eclipse was not easy to deal with. If the fight dragged on longer, he himself might fall into danger. At this time, Darya, who had been sleeping on the sofa, slowly opened her eyes, then asked drowsily and confusedly, "Where is this?" The next second, Darya came to her senses and immediately asked anxiously, "Where is my brother?" When she turned around, she saw her brother dueling with Cedric. Worried about her brother, Darya immediately got up and ran toward Eclipse. At this time, Cedric, noticing Darya running over, was also very panicked. How could this be? The sleep magic couldn't have lost effectiveness in such a short time. Could it be that the magic waves affected Darya? At this time, Darya shouted, "Brother, wake up!" Hearing Darya's voice, Eclipse's attacking motion suddenly stopped, and he slowly said, "It's Darya." Cedric, seeing an opening, immediately attacked Eclipse. At this time, how could Darya, who had hurried over, let Cedric harm her brother? No! She immediately rushed forward and threw herself into Eclipse's arms. At this moment, Cedric was also stunned. What kind of courage and determination made Darya rush toward Eclipse regardless of everything? But the world is so miraculous. The evil dragon finally received the treasure he had long awaited, finally at peace. With such a sister, life was fulfilled. At this moment, Eclipse finally broke free from his mental collapse, his eyes becoming clear. Is brother awake? Eclipse, stroking Dahlia's hair, smiled and said, "I'm awake." Darya, buried in Eclipse's arms, said, "For this period, I've decided not to speak to brother anymore." Really such a big foolish brother. On the other side, the injured Cedric was stopped by Andreisha on his way back to the palace. "Your Highness is injured and needs immediate treatment. This small injury is nothing." Hearing this, Andreisha asked again, "Are Darya and Eclipse all right?" "Don't worry, they're both fine." Hearing this, Andreisha was finally relieved. "That's wonderful, thank you, Your Highness." But Cedric in front of her seemed somewhat off, thinking for a while. Suddenly said somewhat shyly, "I think I've fallen into first love."